IB Nation, welcome back to another edition, what is going to be a jam-packed edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. That's Ryan Roberts. I'm Brian Driscoll. We got a lot going on today. I got to fix my floor. Ryan and I were talking like my floor is making my shirt look off. But we're going to talk about a gap closer today. Notre Dame got Isiah Canion, definite gap closer in my view. We're going to talk about Tyler Buckner to joining Tommy Rees at Alabama. Got the NFL draft starts tonight. We got a lot going on. But before we begin, I have a favor to ask all of you. We have someone in our community that I want us to step up and help, a Notre Dame fan. I want to talk to you all about Jake and Abby. Jake and Abby recently had a baby named Brady. Y'all know where that name came from, right? It came after Brady Quinn. Jake is a big Notre Dame fan, and Jake is their baby Brady was born, I think, 19 weeks, was born very prematurely, spent 19 days in the NICU and home now, but the family has been very overwhelmed, obviously, with the medical bills and the different things, the time off of work. And so they started a GoFundMe page was started on their behalf. Irish Breakdown has donated to it. Here's what I'm asking y'all today. If you're able to, I know we're in tough times, but if you're able to, click on the link there. Don't super chat the show today. No super chats today. I want y'all to give to these folks, okay? And if you put your screen name in there and I see that you donated and you have a question, we'll get to those questions and we'll thank you. But we've always stepped up to help people in need at Irish Breakdown, and it's not because of me and Ryan. It's because of you all. And we have raised thousands of dollars here to help certain people and help different causes that are not necessarily specific to us. This one is. This is a member of the Notre Dame community. I have spoken with Jake. I spent some time talking to Jake. I know somebody else that knows Jake. This is the real deal. This is not something. Jake is very, very thankful that we're able to help him out. I know that Jake is in the show today, watching today. And so, Jake, if you're in there, you want to say hi to everybody, say hi to Jake. But we want to step up and help the family and help Brady. So I'm putting the link in there again. Anything y'all can give today would be so incredibly helpful and beneficial to this family. So if you were going to give a super chat or whatever the issue is or whatever you want to do, I'm going to actually now put the link in the description box to the show and have it in there as well. But if you can help out and you're able to help out, we would appreciate it. And of course, money helps. And I gave money. I would encourage y'all to give money if you're able to. But the biggest thing for me, y'all know where I'm coming on this one, is pray for Jake and Abby and the family as well. If you're able to do both, then do both. And they would greatly appreciate it. But certainly keep them in your prayers and that Brady battles. I'm not a dad, but I remember how much you all helped encouraged me when my dog Rita was sick. And it meant the world. And those prayers meant the world and brought healing to our family and to our dog. And this is a child. So if y'all could step up and help out with Jake and Abby, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And if you were going to give a super chat today, don't go to that link and give to help out. Then that would be a lot more meaningful to me than giving us a super chat today. And if, like I said, if you can't, look, some people just not in a position where they can give. That's cool. Support, prayer, all those type of things is helpful as well. So there's not just one way to help people in need, in my opinion. So I would encourage y'all to do that. So, IB Nation, let's step up. Let's help out a fellow Domer and his son Brady and his wife Abby today as we get ready to have some really fun stuff going on today. I did want to start off with that, and I know that as a community we'll step up to the plate.
Well, and if we're getting things kicked off here today, obviously, like Brian said, we're going to be covering Isiah Canion, star wide receiver out of Warner Robins, 2024 wide receiver, who, if you watch his film, and I know we'll watch his film today, he plays a little bit of everything for Warner Robins, everything from quarterback, a little bit of running back, wide receiver, obviously, plays some defensive back. He's the team's main punter. I think he helps with the return game as well. So Notre Dame received a massive commitment here this afternoon, Brian, 12 o'clock Eastern. It was droughts. We had gotten a confirmation that this was going to happen a couple of days ago, obviously after a great visit that Isiah was able to have over the weekend to Notre Dame for the blue and gold game. That was really the final step in this
Yeah.
recruitment. And we'll talk a whole lot about it, the backstory. We'll talk about the team fit. We'll talk about the what's next. We'll get into the film. We'll do all that great stuff, Brian. But for me, this one seems like for some that it escalated quickly, but this has been a guy that Notre Dame
Yeah.
has been high on for some time now.
Yeah. Ryan, they jumped on him early when he was a 3-star by everybody. Before he kind of went to these camps and different things, they said, hey, look, because you and I were talking about the receiver board. We're talking about Jeremiah McClellan. We're talking about Quasi Gilmore. We're talking about Jason Robinson. We're talking about, hopefully they can get Micah Gilbert on campus and maybe have a shot with Ryan Wingo. And I remember getting a call about Isiah Canion. And I'm like, and I hope I'm saying the name correctly. If I'm not, we'll learn soon enough. But I remember getting a call like, hey, you got to watch this kid. I'm like, okay. Notre Dame's really high on him. So I say, okay, let me go check this kid out. And I'm thinking, okay, they must be struggling a receiver. They must not be able to close on some of their top guys, and they're digging into the bottom of the barrel trying to find some sleeper kid. Because I'm thinking he's from Warner Robins. This is a very heavily recruited area,
Yes.
and kind of the. So I pop in the film, Ryan, and it took me, I don't know, 3 or 4 clips of him actually playing receiver or DB, where I was like, okay, yep, this is a dude. And so the more you watch this film, there's some game film available out there. You're like, this is a different kind of athlete. And the reason he's being overlooked is because he has no position right now.
Yes.
And so Notre Dame got on him early. And I got to give a ton of credit to the staff. And Chad Bowden is one of those ones that was sort of from Chad Bowden and his group of evaluators that they're kind of scouring the country for these kids, and they found him. And then of course Chancey Stuckey gets a hold of them. He's a Warner Robins native as well. Went to a different high school. I think Coach Stuckey went to Northside or something like that. This kid's just from Warner Robins. What's that?
I said you're correct. You're correct.
Good.
Northside.
Didn't embarrass myself today.
No.
And then he's just from Warner Robins. Isiah Canion is just from Warner Robins High School. Period. He gets on him, and Notre Dame immediately climbs up the list for him. And when you look at the film, this is what we talked about yesterday, Ryan. Like, this is the kind of athlete Notre Dame needs to make a living on. And this is an underranked kid. I don't want to say underrated because I think most people didn't even know who he was. He didn't even have grades when most people were when Notre Dame first started looking at him. Underevaluated, under offered, whatever the case may be, Notre Dame gets on him. The reality is, if this is a 5-star kid everybody's been telling him he's a 5-star kid the last 3 years, I don't know if Notre Dame has a shot to get that kid like a Jeremiah Smith type of kid. And so when you look at this kid and you say, okay, let's look at the athleticism, the size, the frame, 6'3" and 1/8 and 198 pounds is what he measured in this winter at a camp.
Verified.
Then verified. Then goes out and runs a 4.51 laser time, which, as we told you, this is going to a camp where they're doing handheld is probably a mid 4.4. Just, because like we've talked about how explosive Braylon James is. Braylon ran a 4.47. Right. So Braylon's a touch faster. This kid's a 4.51. And this is a mover. And then you watch the film, Ryan, and the thing you've said something about Braylon James that was spot on, that is also present with this kid. And that is his first 2 steps off the line when he's playing receiver he's going now.
It's different.
And yes. And then you see that second gear and you see the athleticism. Now he's got a lot of work to be done as a wide receiver. Right? A lot of work to be done as a wide receiver. But the talent is obvious. I mean, absolutely obvious what the talent level is. And Notre Dame got on him early. You start doing some digging on him, very high academic kid. And we told y'all there's a lot of kids out there that actually have that academics. You just got to get on them early and then fight to get them. And as you mentioned, Ryan, he starts taking visits this spring. And every time he shows up to a campus, he leaves with an offer, Florida State being one of the more recent ones. If Notre Dame doesn't get on this kid, when it's all said and done, he's going to have offers from all over the place. Yes. This is a big time talent, Ryan. And you're starting to see the recruiting rankings catch up. On3 now has him as a top 100 kid. I think, was it Rivals or ESPN? I think one of the others, I'm going to go look it up now. One of the others ranked him in the top 250. I'm pulling that up now. That'd be ESPN. Rivals and 247 have him ranked very low. They're wrong. I think Rivals ranking is reflective of just I used to work there. When they create a profile for a kid, if he's got a certain offer list, they'll just throw a 3-star ranking on him and then evaluate him later. Yeah. That's what this one looks like to me. So this is a kid to me, Ryan, that has IB grade, my grade, 4-star, top 100 caliber, 5-star upside. This is a big time commitment. And now you put him in a class with Cam Williams, we'll get to. That backstory is like, this is why this staff is different. They don't care about rankings. They just passed on 2 top 250 defensive ends from Massachusetts that they had a great shot at getting because they took a kid that everybody thinks is a 3-star from Georgia named Cole Mullins. They don't care about that stuff. They look at the film, and when you look at this kid's film, Ryan, this kid's a ball player. So great job by the Notre Dame staff. Chad Bowden, Chancey Stuckey, all of them, to find this kid and then get this kid and get him into class early. Because as you said, the blue gold game this week was closing time, essentially.
Yes.
This has been trending this way for a while. It was about get him on campus, let him feel comfortable, and then that's the final deal. And that's what happened.
And I feel like a lot of people quickly, Notre Dame fans, are getting way more on board with this one, Brian, because like you said, some of the rankings are starting to reflect finally how talented he is. And I mean, this is a kid that with a big senior year, he's going to vault up rankings. Like he really is. I mean, he's that type of kid. Because to the background, which I think is just absolutely fascinating, is that this is why high school evaluation, I think, is tricky sometimes. This is the tough part for everyone, for me, is that this is a young man that although you see him at wide receiver, and I think some people could even see him as a defensive back potentially on the next level, you don't see a ton of reps at any one spot because he's just he's the best athlete on the field at all times. He's playing quarterback. He's playing wide receiver. When we get to the film, you're going to see him playing off man, or it might be zone on defense as a cornerback, and he's turned to run, speed turn, and able to catch a ball down the field, playing almost like a center field type of role. Like this kid is a really gifted athlete. So that recruiting ranking is really going to start to, I think, reflect that. He's going to reflect the talent level that you have there. And Brian, I think that you mentioned already, it's a good evaluation by the staff early. There's no doubt. And I mean, this one was transparency, right? We'll give some transparency. The first time I talked to Isiah after he was offered, he flat out told me, and this was, of course, off the record, so I wasn't going to put it out in the universe until now, that Notre Dame was going to be really hard to beat. He just flat out said that. He's like, they're going to be really hard to beat because, one, he's a high academic kid. He's a really talented athlete. But more than anything, we talk about the relationship that he has with Chancey Stuckey. That's big time for him. They know the same people. They have a relationship. They have a deep relationship. So the minute that they offered Isiah Canion, Notre Dame was going to be hard to beat, and they ended up being incredibly hard to beat.
You talk about high academics. We can throw that out there all we want, but it's backed up by the offer list, Ryan. I mean, you look at this kid's offer list, and he's obviously got Notre Dame on there, and he's got Stanford on there. Those are obvious ones, but that doesn't always mean that a kid is like a really elite a really elite student. You know, Vanderbilt, Stanford, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Duke. Those are all symbols that this is probably a good student if they're going after him. But he also has 2 Ivy League offers. He has an offer from Penn and Dartmouth. Right?
It's like Micah Bell last year. Remember Micah Bell had like Ivy League schools in his top 10? It's like, yeah.
Exactly. So this isn't just he cares about academics. This is also an outstanding student, not just cares about academics, but he's also incredibly gifted in the classroom as well. That's why he has Ivy League offers, right? Yes. So that's when you talk about, hey, yes, he's an academic guy. This is why Notre Dame is going to be attractive to a kid like that. This is an Ivy League caliber student that also happens to be 6'3 plus, 198 pounds, and really fast. There's a comment in the chat from Brian Richmond. He said he plays faster than 4.51. I want to make clear that we're talking about 4.51 laser time. That means you're actually getting a real time, not a camp inflated, 4.4 whatever thing. You're getting a real time. This is as a 17-year-old kid who, after 3-4 years in the Matt Bayless strength program, is going to be a legit 4.4 laser timed guy. But 4.51 laser timed is moving, folks. It is absolutely moving, especially for a 17-year-old.
And he looks skinny at 198 pounds, man. He's going to be 210, 215, running 4.4 or something.
Yes. Right. I put that in my class impact. That's a great point because you look at his frame. He's got a good frame. Like he's got broad shoulders, really big time wingspan, but he's checking in at 198. And I'm like, he still has a lot of that you could put onto that frame.
Yes.
Man. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about a kid that's going to be 6'3 plus 215 and a burner. And we'll dive into the film here in a second and talk a little bit more specifically about the film. But he's a kid, Ryan, that I look at and I'm like, this guy, this is the kind of athlete that Notre Dame is looking for. And here's the thing, they've now got 2 of those in this class.
Yep.
Because Cam Williams is very similar too. Cam is a big-time home run hitter. And the reason it's important is you can't have a bunch of volume guys in your class, Ryan, because then you're not going to be able to spread the ball around to enough guys, or you're not going to have the impact that you need. You now have 2 guys that can do a lot of damage on a few number of touches.
Yes.
And that's a great problem to have. And because you've got 2 guys now that are more Braylon James than they are Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, and Caleb Smith, who's more shifty, right? So that's the kind of complementary stuff that we talk about them needing. You know, last year's class had the 1 burner, 2 possession type guys that are good athletes, and then sort of the shifty, make you miss, right? But potential return guy type of dude. Now you've landed 2 of Braylon James's in this class, right? Yeah. And so you're really upping that speed level in this class. And so in that regard, it's impactful. You talk about how it impacts the class. So let's do class impact here, Ryan. And coming into the cycle, Notre Dame is looking for 3 receivers. Right now, that's still the target, but I think that the staff is, as they kind of get off the road, is going to sit down and talk and say, hey, we need to think about upping it to 4. I think that decision could ultimately be made, that they up it to 4. But if you're going to start off with 2, these are 2 good ones to have because you've now met your needs in this class. I think they also, what their needs in the class were, Ryan, I think they needed speed, even more speed in this class, because that's one thing they lost when Dylan Edwards decommitted last year, is they lost one of their speed guys. And I think that you add more size. And I think with him and Cam Williams, these are 2 guys, in my view, Ryan, with the way Notre Dame plays, right? This isn't true for every offense, but because Notre Dame is still a pro-style team, these are 2 kids to me that can play all 3 spots to varying degrees. And I think that's an important piece to this as well. So you got some guys that bring some versatility. I mean, you can fit them with the class ahead of them based on what spots and what is needed in your depth chart. That's an important piece of this class impact as well.
Brian, you know what's another interesting point about that though is that we hear about roster building all the time as far as how you build a team, and you always hear building from the inside out. I actually think Notre Dame and some other teams from just the wide receiver position, just talking about wide receiver, it's actually important to build from the outside in, finding those guys that can play outside the numbers, the field receiver, the boundary receiver, and then figuring out the dynamic type of players. Because at the end of the day, we talk about the trends of Notre Dame. What's been the high volume pass receiver outside of the tight end position for Notre Dame? It's been that boundary guy, right? The outside receiver. That's kind of how the offense has been run. We'll see if there's any change to that, in the next couple of years under Jared Parker. But traditionally, I would say Notre Dame wants to build the wide receiver group from the outside and work its way in. Like, that's kind of the way. And right now you have Cam Williams, who's 6'2", 185, 190 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark, 4'4", something type of athlete. And then you have now Isiah Canion, who is a shade over 6'3", going to be 200 plus pounds easily early on in his Notre Dame career, running low 4.5, maybe high 4.4 at that point in his career as well. So you have got 2 very impressive talents at outside receiver now. And now it's about finding those mix and match athletes that can work together with these types of players. And I think Notre Dame's put himself in a great position to do so pretty quickly here.
Yeah. And the other thing too, here's where this also matters, right? You nailed it all. I'm going to add another level to this. Landing a kid like this with Cam Williams, who do bring that versatility, and this is I think kind of what you're getting to as well. You can just go get the next best guy.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, in this class, you don't have to say, man, well, we got this guy. So, man, I really wanted to get this kid, but man, our next guy has to be a boundary. Our next guy has to be a slot or a field. I mean, shoot, I would love to get this kid, but when you've got this kind of hey, go get the next best guy that you can land in this class and get it. Overall, Ryan, when you look at how this impacts the class, obviously this is commitment number 11, offensive commitment number 7 as well. This offensive class is really off to a phenomenal start.
Shaping out, man.
I mean, it is. They got to close, right? and I still have some questions about the offensive line. I don't know who they're going to close with. We have a pretty good idea who's left on the board everywhere else, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you're getting very close to the skill positions to meeting your needs. I think 1 to 2 more receivers, 1 running back, and they're done at the skill positions.
Yep.
And they're recruiting impact guys. I mean, that's the thing is, Ryan, there's guys with a lot of ability on the board. I would argue this is arguably the best chance that Notre Dame has really since probably 2015 to really stack together 2 really dynamic receiver classes in a row. Now, in 2022, they did land Tobias Merriweather, but that was it. I mean, they lost C.J. Williams. They lost Maureen Walker. So they didn't have it back-to-back. The 2021 receiver class was pretty good, but again, you lost out. And just to refresh people's memory, the 2015 class had Jalen Guyton, C.J. Sanders, Miles Boykin, and Equanimous St. Brown. 2 of those guys were drafted, and the third guy, Jalen Guyton, has been a starter in the National Football League. Obviously, he had to leave.
Probably the best out of the 4 in the NFL.
In the
too,
NFL,
which is
yes,
funny.
you are absolutely correct. The next year, they followed that up with Javon McKinley, Chase Claypool, and Kevin Stefferson. So, yes, they are loading up now at receiver and back-to-back, and we could debate who's better. We'll have that once this class is signed, what 2-year haul is better. But this is what you have to do, Ryan. This is the way that you build up classes. That you build up your depth chart. It's not just having that 1 year where you're really, really good. It's got to stack them. And that team, the guys that we just talked about in those 2 years were big parts to Notre Dame being a playoff team in 2018, right? Miles Boykin, or actually both playoff teams, really. Miles Boykin, obviously, and Chase Claypool were a big part of that 2018 team. And then you look at 2020, that's when Javon McKinley steps up and is your leading receiver on that team. So those 2 receiver classes played a big role in a lot of success for Notre Dame those years. And then it wasn't just the receivers. I mean, in 2016, this offensive haul that Notre Dame had that year was outstanding. 2015 offensive class was Brandon Wimbush at quarterback, Dexter Williams, Josh Adams, Alize Mack at tight end, he was at Alize Jones at the time, became Alize Mack, Jalen Guyton, C.J. Sanders, Miles Boykin, Equanimous St. Brown. But here's the key for Notre Dame filling out this class. That year, they only signed 2 offensive linemen, Tristan Hodge and Trevor Ruland. Sort of. I don't really blame the staff for that one. The thing that killed him was Jerry Tillery was committed in that class for a long time as an offensive lineman. And he decided really late, that he wanted to play defense. And so there wasn't an opportunity really to go out there and find a replacement of that caliber. And that was the 2015 class, right? And then the 2016 class, you come out and you land Stefferson, Claypool, McKinley. We talked about running back was good, but not great. Tony Jones, Deion McIntosh. You came up short at quarterback with Ian Book compared to some other guys. Your offensive line class was pretty good. Tommy Kramer, Liam Eichenberg, Parker Boudreaux. But they did have a big miss in that class. They wanted Ben Bredeson and missed him.
Ooh.
In that class. If they would have landed him with Kramer and Eichenberg, that would have been pretty good. But this is the thing that this class, Ryan, has a chance to be, is we just talked about how this has a chance to stack up with one of the best back-to-back hauls at receiver in a while. But the thing that these 2 classes have a chance to do that those classes different is if they can finish strong on the offensive line. Give me 2 of like Styles Prescott, Gilby Lambert, and Liam Andrews. Right?
Yeah.
Who I think can play tackle. We'll talk about that another day. Okay. I think he can. Yes. Okay. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I talked about it on the board, and, no disrespect on the Anthony Knapp thing, but Liam Andrews is much more offensive tackle than Anthony Knapp is, in my opinion. Yeah.
Give me 2 of those 3 guys, and the offensive line is set. So you're on the verge of, unlike the 15-16 year, because in 16 you had a okay running back haul, okay quarterback haul. 15, your offensive line wasn't where you needed it to be. This class has these 2 classes have a chance to stack up and literally get your needs and get talented players at every position. 2 really big time quarterbacks in a row, 2 great running back hauls in a row if they can get Kedron Young. And even if you don't, Anise Williams is a good football player. He's a top 250 football player, right? That's your down guy. Jeremiah Love last year. Kedron Young, though, to me, takes it over the top. I mean, he's really good. You're recruiting receiver with anybody, right? I mean, you're you say, oh, well, Ohio State's better. Okay, well, we can have that discussion,
Sure.
But that's who we're now having this discussion with. LSU, the Ohio State's teams that are loading up a receiver. Tight end, you're loading up with top players and an offensive line if they can finish. So Isiah Canion to me is a big piece of this, Ryan, because I love Micah Gilbert. I'm looking forward to talking about him next week and seeing what he does. Love Jason Robinson, but you just can't stress enough the importance of getting a 6'3", 200-pound burner on the outside.
Yeah.
And that's what this kid is, in my opinion. He's raw. He's going to need some work, but the stuff he needs work on is the stuff that as a receivers coach, I could fix in one off season. I'm serious.
Sure.
Like I can't. I've done this before with 1AA and Division III athletes, right? Chancey Stuckey, if I could do it, Chancey Stuckey can do it, right?
Sure.
So, and from everything we've heard, the kid's a worker. That's the other part about it too.
Very polite, soft-spoken worker.
That stuff will all come quickly, as we've seen with Braylon James. I mean, Braylon James just in 15 practices made a pretty big jump in the technical aspects of his game.
100%.
And that'll continue to grow. So class impact wise, Ryan, this is a very key ingredient to Notre Dame stacking a second straight big time top 5 overall caliber offensive haul. Because that's what I think last year's offensive haul. I think it was one of the 5 best offensive hauls in the country. When you look just total meeting needs, impact players. I mean, you got a top 100 quarterback, you got a top 100 running back, you got one of the 3 or 4 best receiver classes, you got a top 150 tight end, you got a really good 5-man offensive line class. And then this year, a 5-star quarterback, top 200 running back. You're off to a great start with 2 top 100 receivers in my view. You've got a top 250 tight end, and you've got a good start on offensive line. I'm not as high on Anthony Knapp as Notre Dame is. Still a quality player. And Peter Jones, to me, as a guard, is a top 150 caliber player to me.
Good player. Yep.
Now, finish off the offensive line. That's going to, in the receiver, that's going to be the key. But they've got the makings of back-to-back big-time offensive hauls. And it's kind of funny that since Marcus Freeman has arrived, that's the side of the ball that's really taken the biggest step, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Interesting, funny.
Intriguing,
Intriguing, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Pick your adjective. Yeah. It's
pretty awesome.
Definitely interesting. Yeah. I mean, for me, Brian, like I always think of it from a defensive perspective, as you know, but it's like, who do I not want to cover? I don't want to cover the 6'3" guy who's long, who can run really fast. Like that's it's just it, man. Because the one thing about Isiah is, as he continues to develop into his body, what is he going to like when he is able to stack consistently? He's going to create a lot of big plays. But even when he isn't able to fully stack players, what can you do with him? Back shoulders, put the ball up in the air, let him go make plays, man. Like he's one of those kids, similar-ish to Cam Williams, but also similar to Micah Gilbert, where he's never covered, right? You're never covered with the catch radius, with the body, with the upside that he has to develop physically. Like those are the things that you can't teach. Talk about the unteachables all the time. I can't teach him being tall, long, and run really fast. I can't teach those things. To your point, you can teach the starts off the line of scrimmage, the stances, the ability to get out of his breaks. Like you can teach those things to a high degree. Can't teach him being long. You can't teach him being athletic, man. So at the end of the day, if you trust the people developing, who I do, I trust Chancey Stuckey at the wide receiver position to develop, then I am fully okay with taking a kid that is perceived as raw because he has a high upside, and I trust the developments that's going to happen next.
I'm gonna steal a phrase Ryan loves. You knocked that comment out of the park, Ryan. Okay, because that's exactly your point. You had to take polished kids before because you didn't have the receivers coach to develop them. Just didn't. Now you can take this kid that's just elite tools because you trust that your receivers coach is going to be able to teach him how to line up and get out of a stance and beat the press and execute top ends and find soft spots in the zone and those type of things. And you've also got a nice blend of volume players. Rico and Jaden Greathouse are both volume guys, in my opinion. They're trying to close on a volume guy in the 2024 class next week. They're hoping to get Micah Gilbert, who commits. He'll make his decision on the 2nd. I think Cam Williams has a little bit of volume to his game as well. And I think this kid could be a volume guy if to your point, if the game develops. But at the very least, he gives you a big-time playmaker. But
Yes.
there's such greater optimism now with a guy like Braylon. And that's part of the reason I had Braylon James ranked so high, because I'm actually confident now that I probably would not have ranked Braylon James as high if they didn't have a receivers coach that I had some faith in. Because that's got to be part of your ranking. Yeah, this kid's raw, but he's going to a place that doesn't know how to develop kids like him.
Yep.
That's got to factor into it. And there is a much greater level of confidence and the way that Marcus Freeman has made hires so far, if Chancey Stuckey leaves at some point, which he will. I mean, all coaches, the odds of him being a lifer at Notre Dame, I don't know if they're great. Then you go out there, whether it's a year, 2, 5, 10, whatever, he'll leave someday, most likely. The odds are as long as Marcus Freeman is here, he's going to put a value on a guy that can coach, teach a position. And that's important. I mean, that's what a lot of his hires have been. That's what Joe Rudolph is, right? Now, to what degree, we'll find that out. But that was a big thing. He was a teacher. That was a big thing. And it adds a great deal of confidence to what they got here. So class impact wise, Ryan, like I said, big time player. We're going to pull up the film here next, but I did want to point something out. And so since we have started this show and we started the fundraiser, we have had 24 people have since, this may not all be Irish Breakdown people, but since the show started, 24 new people have donated to Jake and Abby to help Brady. And they have already raised about $1,000 already. So let's keep it going. Let's definitely keep it going, everybody. But I knew that IB Nation would answer the bell, answer the call. I had no doubt, because you all are amazing people with humongous hearts. And it's just one of the things I absolutely love about all of you so much. Just the kindness and care and love that you all have for this community and just other people means the world to me. And I can't express that enough. So thank you all so much for that. And I'm quite confident Jake and Abby are going to be very appreciative of it as well. But I did want to update that. So you all are taking care of business. But hey, if you're still able to give and you haven't yet, please do. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that today. So Ryan, you ready to dive into some film? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, because that answer with Ryan is one of the things I love about Ryan is there's one thing we have in common. You don't ever have to say you don't have to genuinely ask, hey, are you ready to watch some film? Because the answer is always yes, of course. I'm ready to watch.
Someone asked me, Brian, I think it was today or yesterday, they said, before you're about to go to sleep at night, you just kind of let your, decompress and just kind of relax. I'm like, no, I watch film before I go to bed.
I used to be like that. But I would never sleep. I couldn't sleep. I would have my iPad on and I'd be watching film. Like, dude, I can't sleep, because then it would just wake me up more. But yes, I'm ready to watch some film.
Yes.
So let's pull up here some film of Mr. Canion, Ryan. And obviously what you're going to see in this film is you're going to see him playing receiver, quarterback, and defensive back. This is actually one of him playing receiver. Look how smooth he is, Ryan. This is one of those things where, like I say, this is not a kid that really knows how to play yet. The stack, the stem is okay, but it's not great. He kind of gets himself to bump in, and the acceleration through the look back and all that's not where you want it to be. But then he just runs by a dude and then goes up and makes that play.
Yeah, man.
I mean, again, it's just the things that you can't teach. That's what you love about this kid.
He makes stuff look very easy on film, man, which is, I think, that's a testament to the athleticism. And look, man, he's got a little bit of an arm too.
Yeah.
He can get the ball out there a little bit, man.
That's him throwing.
There a little bit.
That's him throwing. Now, and this is him playing defensive back. So I love it. First 3 clips, it's at 3 different positions. Look at those hips, Ryan. Look at the footwork.
This is the rep that sold me on him. This was the rep right here, actually.
Yes. I mean, it's like third clip, and you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
But a really smooth pedal, right? No technique there, really. That is allowing him to be that. It's really just about athleticism and just being a really smooth, fluid kid. Finds the ball, breaks it up, actually picks it off, and makes the play. So first 3 clips, this kid has caught a long pass, thrown a long touchdown pass, and had a phenomenal interception in 3 plays.
This is a wide receiver again.
Just that speed. I mean, just that speed off the line. and just outruns this kid for a big play. And he catches the ball very clean. And this doesn't surprise me because he does play quarterback. I mean, I've always felt that, when I was coaching at the lower levels, I've said this before, I would always try to find those kids that are really athletic quarterbacks, because nobody on the team touches the football more and catches the ball more than a quarterback. People say, what do you mean a quarterback? Yeah, if you're in a shotgun offense, you literally catch the football every single play.
Yep.
Every play. Or you're getting a snap. The ball is coming into your hands and you have to handle it perfectly every single snap. Nobody else does that, right? I mean, nobody.
No.
This is a nice little play here. You're going to see some stuff like this is not good technique, Ryan, at the top end. He leans back. He doesn't drive his hips into the ground, yet he still is in and out of that break quick, right? Like that says something. Most athletes are really choppy when they lean back like this. Like the teaching point is here is what I taught is chest over knees, knees over toes. That's the proper, top end technique on a stop route like that. And essentially it's, your hips are the brakes, not your feet, not your arms. Your hips are the brakes. Drive your hips into the ground. He didn't do that on that play, but yet he was still 1-2 out of the break. And that was a play as a receivers coach. You say, boy, if I can teach this kid how to actually run a route, he's going to be a really dynamic route runner when it's all said and done too, because he's got easy movement skills, like really easy movement skills.
He has really good hips.
Balance. Yes.
Really good hips. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, even like some parts of it, right? It's like, came back to the football well on that one clip. I think that he really does. And this happens with the quarterback position sometimes when you have guys that play quarterback as well, is I think he understands where he needs to attack. It's just about attacking properly, right? Like that's the nuance and the technical aspects of playing the position, the ability to consistently do that. But then, I mean, you see the effort as well here, right? Like this is a kid that is 198 pounds, right? And just imagine when he's 215, what he's going to be as a blocker, being able to, it's just poor kid, man. It's just not fun. It's just not fun.
This is one of the few clips, Ryan, because a lot of the clips are far away. Yeah. This is one of the few clips where you can see how big he is.
Yes.
Right? You can see how he's really tall. You can see his long arms. Yep. This is one of the few. A lot of them are a little too far away to really get a glimpse of what his size is. We've seen photos, so we can kind of look at that too. But this is one of those ones that you say, okay, this kid's got really good size. Really good size. But just great concentration, too. There's two defenders between him and the football, and he still makes this grab.
I think he tracks the ball really well. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a baseball kid as well. I don't know if he plays baseball or not, but I think he tracks really well.
I will bet you $20 he's played baseball in his life, because just even something similar, this is going to sound funny, right? This isn't like evaluation at all, but have you seen him? Have you seen the photo I used for the show today with the baseball cap on? He wears he wears a hat like a baseball player. Like a lot of kids that have big hair like him, they just kind of place it on top and it just kind of sits there. He knows how to pull it down and get his hair to the side like a kid that plays baseball. You know what I mean? And, that kind of showed me something too. This is him at quarterback again.
Looks like a javelin thrower there, man.
Yeah.
Long.
I mean, Ryan, he's throwing this ball from the 41 and it lands, 5-6 yards deep in the end zone.
Yeah, it's a good ball, man. It's a good ball.
Yeah.
According to someone on this podcast last year, somebody in the chat who said that, what was it? Drew Pine can't throw the ball more than 30 yards, right? So he just threw the ball about 20 yards further than Drew Pine.
Come on now. Who said that?
You remember we used to talk about it occasionally after that. I forget who said that, but
oh god,
maybe if somebody on the message board said.
I can't blocked that out of my head. That's him throwing the ball again. You can see how long his legs are too. He's got very long legs. Very long legs.
He's decently talented quarterback as well, man. Like again, like if there was a group of 5 team, like I think we talked about like Georgia State yesterday, or like a Toledo or something, I'd be like, hey man, you can play quarterback if you want over here. Like
he's a good hands catcher too, right? Which again, I expect from someone who has a quarterback background.
Yes.
I expect a guy because as a quarterback, you always are catching the ball with your hands. That I'll tell you, that helped me when I moved to receiver. I never played receiver even as a little kid in the street, I was always the quarterback. I was never playing receiver, but I was able to transition to receiver in high school. In my second career game as a wide receiver, I had 5 touchdowns, because you just touch the ball so much, you're just used to it, and started as a freshman at wide receiver. So that's something I've always found is guys that have a quarterback background usually have really good hands.
Yeah,
that could be personal bias, but that's just kind of what I've also found as a coach as well. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's a hands catcher, not a body catcher, to be completely honest with you.
This is one of those annoying guys as a defensive coordinator too, because you're always like, don't let him run the ball. Don't run the ball.
Yeah.
Don't run the ball. But then he completed like 69% of his passes.
He doesn't,
last year.
he doesn't run. If you, I don't know if there's a single clip on here of him running. Ryan, he didn't even have 100
just
yards
one that I've seen so far. Yeah, it's crazy.
He had like 50 some yards rushing last year, only like 100 something a year before. This kid does not run the football when he's a quarterback. He throws it.
Yeah,
which is wild. I thought when I heard he played quarterback, he's going to be some kind of dual threat run throw guy, but that's just not what he does.
He throws the ball a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like 69% of his passes he complete last year.
I love the
like
balance
like,
here, Ryan. Yeah, guy trips up his back foot. He's able to quickly recover and get upfield. If they don't do at least one trick play with him throwing the football during his Notre Dame career, I'm going to be very disappointed. Very disappointed.
I mean, they never did one with Avery Davis, so you know,
kept waiting on that. That maybe that one was too obvious. I don't know.
Maybe
this is easy speed. He's not even running hard. He has no really idea of how to properly attack this corner. He just runs by him and guy's in his hip, and he just tracks the ball like it's nothing.
Yep.
This kid has really impressive tools, Ryan.
He's playing in the state of Georgia, man. Yes. He plays in the state of Georgia as well.
Yeah.
Look
how quickly, not the block destruction, because this kid wants no part of blocking him. Like this kid wants zero part of blocking Isiah Canion on this play. I'm more referring to the quickness, the plant, and how quickly he moves over to make this tackle. Like that's some suddenness right there, Ryan. And that's that's what I see in my play.
He could play safety on the college level without a doubt. Like he could play at Notre Dame at safety, in my opinion, from the tools that he has. But he's just so talented with the football in his hands, man. Like, and he's also Brian. There was an article I just saw recently talking about Isiah Canion that had him as one of the top 10 returning punters in the state of Georgia as well. I mean, we're just talking about the athleticism here, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just. I think he averaged like high 30s as a punter this past year too. Like it's just insane, man. Absolutely insane.
He's a talented kid. He really is a talented kid, Ryan. And it's in every regard. This is a Notre Dame kid. You talk about like Notre Dame kids. This is a Notre Dame kid. Quiet, unassuming.
Yes.
You know, not the typical receiver that's out there like, look at me. You know, look how I'm talkative and I'm flamboyant and I'm doing all this and I'm doing all that. That's not who he is. And high academic kid, just everything you kind of want. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. He's everything that you kind of want in a Notre Dame student athlete, but he's also really talented, which is the final piece to this whole thing, right? Like, yes, I want great students and great young men, but they also have to be great football players. And this kid has the potential to be an outstanding football player. So a very important pickup for Notre Dame.
And I will say this just about the staff real quick, as far as their evaluations, not only of Isiah Canion, you're never going to agree with every evaluation, right? But I will say this about this staff. They find some gems who end up being very high recruited players. I mean, Brian, do you remember when they first were talking about Brandon Hillman, the last class, right? And everyone at first was like, what is this 3-star for Virginia? At the end of it, it's like, oh, how could we lose this guy? He's a stud. I'm just like, guys, trust the process, man. Trust the process. There's a whole season ago of development. There's also a whole season of recruiting ranking bumps that are in store for some of these kids. Like this is not going to be we've already seen the recruiting bump happen. Like you mentioned, he's a top 100 kid by one service. He's not going to be a 3-star on the others for very long. Like, it's just not going to happen
because they're just going to look dumb. I mean, I think they're just like, hold on a second, man. This kid that, you know, I can't do it. I can't have this kid low. We're going to look ridiculous. And I don't believe I've yet to find any camp film from him. So I don't think he's a camp guy either. So
it doesn't help him on the ranking side. Yeah.
It doesn't matter to our rankings, but it does to his. Two more aspects I want to discuss, Ryan. I want to make one comment about this importance of this recruitment. And then we'll dive into sort of the what's next briefly. But let's not also overlook the fact that this is the third straight commitment that Notre Dame, in the last month, Notre Dame has landed 3 commitments. It started with Anthony Knapp. They recently got Cole. He committed on March 29th, I believe. Right. And then Cole Mullins committed publicly committed this past Saturday. And then now Isiah Canion, Georgia, and Georgia. 3 kids from the state of Georgia. Huge. Cannot be overlooked. And 2 of them, actually Roswell's not a bad program either, but 2 of them are from, 2 of them are from like big areas, like not like some middle of nowhere, you know, schools. These are from big areas and schools that bring it. And it cannot be overlooked how important that is.
I'm pretty sure
Ryan.
Roswell played Mill Creek last season, if I remember
Yeah, I
correctly.
think
So, like,
so.
yeah,
I think
I mean,
so.
Roswell, Mill Creek, and now Warner Robins, these are three very good programs in the state of
Yeah.
Georgia. So, not only are you going into the state, which, I mean, guys, if you want to look at on a year-to-year basis, some of the talent the state of Georgia puts out in general, it's silly, man. Like, we'll talk about the NFL draft during the show later on, and we'll do the NFL draft show tonight, Brian. I remember I was looking at was it 2020 recruiting class with like Miles Murphy and those guys? It's like Will Anderson, Miles Murphy, Joshua Downs, all the way down, man. It was like that was an embarrassment of riches that year. And that happens almost every single year in the state of Georgia where you
Right.
have that type of talent. So getting this type of talent out of the state of Georgia is never a bad thing,
No.
fellas. Never a bad thing.
Well, and we're now seeing in some years Georgia having more kids drafted than Florida in some
Yeah.
years. Partly because there's been some, again, it's all a lot of it part of the geographic shifts, but you're also seeing more and more big time football programs in Georgia where there's good coaching and good development and those type of things. And so Georgia has really upped its game. It really upped its game in the last 10 years, really, to where, and here's the thing too, Ryan, that I want to discuss as well. And here's why this is important. I'm actually looking now. Roswell did not play Mill Creek last year. They played Johns Creek. That's what I
Got it.
think we were thinking. They played Johns Creek, but all three of them went deep into the playoffs. Roswell was 12-2. Isiah Canion's team was 10-5, lost in the state championship game. And then obviously I think Mill Creek won a state championship, correct? Or they lost in this. Yeah, they lost in the regular season and then won it all. So you're talking about kids that come from really good programs in the state of Georgia.
Yes.
The reality is here too, Ryan, which is very, very important, is this. Georgia, for whatever reason, and there's a million I don't really care to get into, but Georgia kids, I have found, are much better fits and are more amicable to the idea of going to Notre Dame than Florida kids. There's a lot of different reasons for it. Some of it being there's a lot of transplants there, so it's not as pure, we're Florida, baby, we're Southern. There's a lot of transplants that, hey, I'm from here, but my family's from New York or Pennsylvania or Ohio or whatever. I find that a lot, right? The school systems are better.
Yes.
And there's Georgia is close. Now they're not close to Texas, right? But they're closer to Texas in regard to the type of programs they're building than Florida, where you have a couple of the bigger cities have produced some big time public schools, but in Florida it's IMG, it's St. Thomas Aquinas, it's Berkeley Prep, it's schools like that. Where in Georgia you're seeing a bunch of these big time public schools develop. They tend to have higher enrollment. They tend to, those type. I mean, there's just a lot of reasons why you're just seeing a lot greater focus on that state, and you're getting similar athletes to what you're getting in Florida. They're just more pro Notre, or at least not say pro Notre Dame, but more open to the idea of coming up to Notre Dame. That has to be looked at as well, and that's what another reason I say it's more Texas for Notre Dame than it is Florida. Florida is tough for Notre Dame to get kids out of. You got to recruit it. Find the Anthony Careys, find those kids like that. Go recruit the next Keon Keeley, because eventually you're going to get that kid to say yes. There just aren't as many of those types in Florida that are Notre Dame fits. Georgia, there's a lot more of them. There's a lot more Kyle Hamiltons in the state of Georgia than there are in Florida. And Isiah Canion is a lot like Kyle Hamilton. High academic kid, Ivy League offers. I mean, remember, Kyle's older brother played basketball at Penn.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's better fits. And so that's why Georgia is such an important state for Notre Dame. And they were doing really well in the state for a while, then had a couple years where they didn't have as much success. So it is huge to get back there this year. And now you have 3 kids from the state of Georgia.
Yep.
And they're trying to get more. I mean, that's the thing too, Ryan, is there's some other kids on the board left. Don't know if they're going to get any of them, but there's more kids on the board in 24 from the state of Georgia. And there's definitely some 25 kids from the state of Georgia. Because Notre Dame, I mean, I believe in the update that I put up today that there's maybe it's the one I sent you, but there's kids from Georgia, or there's coaches going to Georgia these next 2 days to see different kids. So I think Mike Mickens is going to be down there to see a couple corners, right?
Yeah.
I believe. down there. So getting back into Georgia, getting more kids out of Georgia is important because, as we've always said, the more kids you get from a state, the more those kids can kind of relate to coming up and seeing you and being more comfortable to making that type of move in the future, because there are kids that they can relate to. And I've said this before, kids tend to be more connect more by geography than a lot of other things when it comes to athletes. They tend to have we have these debates in the show, right? Hey, I'm from Jersey, right? Jersey players are the best. Hey, I'm from Virginia, Virginia players are the best. And so when you can get kids like that, it really helps your entire operation. It really does. So the Georgia aspect, Ryan, cannot be overlooked here.
Yeah, I mean, especially because it is sort of like Texas in the sense also that there's such a high volume of players as well, right? Where it's like Georgia's not going to get all these kids, guys. Like Alabama's not going to get all these kids. There's going to be some other talent that is out there that Notre Dame can find, right? And whether it is an Isiah Canion, whether it is an Anthony Napa, Cole Mullins, like those types of players that make sense for Notre Dame that maybe are overlooked slightly because there's like 6 good safeties in Georgia, for instance, right? Like it's just insane. I mean, from the Ricardo Joneses, the DeMello Jones, the KJ Boldens, it's like you can't take everyone at the end of the day. You can't take everyone. So finding that, and I mean, North Carolina is another one, Brian. We're seeing Notre Dame some impact in North Carolina, both in 2023 and hopefully in 2024 here moving forward, obviously with Bryce Young and Micah Gilbert. So there are some states that this staff is definitely prioritized. We talked about Texas impact, starting to get more into Georgia, get more into the Carolinas. There are some spots in the country that we see now that Notre Dame is having tremendous impact more than they did on the previous staff.
Absolutely. Last piece to this, Ryan, is kind of what's next. And we won't spend a lot of time on what's next, but I do want to just kind of go over a couple things because we discussed a lot of it yesterday, Ryan.
Yep.
Right now, they definitely need one more receiver in this class. I think when it's all said and done, they're going to get to 4. That's I think. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do think there need to be some decisions made that I just don't know that they're ready to make those decisions yet, which is why we discussed what we talked about yesterday. Okay, where are we with the need for this position? Where are we with the need for this position? Are we okay not taking here? How do we count Lorenzo Styles? Because, there's a lot of those different things that factor into it. Is there anybody else off the current roster that we think might leave after this year or whatever the case may be? And so I think those are all things that you look at and say, hey, I think we can get to that number, but then you also have to be careful too, because there's some really good guys on the board next year. So you say, okay, so are we willing to go lower on numbers this year to get certain guys this year? Those are all parts of the process that you have to decide. If we take 4, are they all 4 kids that are willing to sit for a year if that potential is there, because they're going to be stepping into a pretty loaded depth chart? There's a lot of different decisions that this staff has to make, and they have to be careful about who that 3rd and 4th guy are, that they're going to be guys willing to compete and battle beyond just a year.
Sure.
And so that's the piece of it. Right now, I think it's pretty clear that there are 2 guys above everyone else on the board that Notre Dame is going to try and close on. And one of them is going to be making a decision on Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday. So what would that be? 5 days? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 5 days from now. And that's going to be Micah Gilbert from North Carolina. You were just talking about it, Ryan. This is another chance to get into Carolina. You've already got Jack Larson.
Yep.
Bryce Young is going to make a decision on this weekend on Saturday. We like where Notre Dame is on that one. This is another one. What have we always said? Texas, Arizona, Missouri, Carolinas, Georgia. Important areas for Notre Dame, for athletes. And Micah Gilbert's one of those guys, Ryan.
He is, and he brings a style that is very unique comparative to the 2 commits that Notre Dame has in this class. We've just broke down extensively. What do you get in Isiah Canion? You get a 6'3 plus guy that can run by pretty much anybody on the outside. That's kind of his profile. Also has smooth hips, where you say eventually, when he is taught correctly, could be a nice route runner for an outside receiver as well. So you look at that tall, outside, vertically oriented receiver that's got speed to burn, combined with Cam Williams, who, after his junior year, Cam Williams is in the conversation as one of the premier wide receivers in the 2024 class. We're talking about a 6'2", 185-pound wide receiver that's incredibly smooth, also fast, And he really took a big step of development from sophomore to junior year from a technical aspect, and he got faster as well. So you have those two guys as your premier outside receivers in this class, but guys that can also move around a little bit. Micah Gilbert's a completely different type of football player. He is 6'2", 200 pounds, can play on the outside, but he plays on a much different way than those two guys. He is a big-bodied, contested catch, physical receiver with hands for days. Like, this kid has some Venus flytraps as his hands, man. Like, this kid, whatever touches it, he catches every single time. He has great hands in this class. He's that guy that's going to be that back shoulder contested catch guy, but also you see some of the chops that Mike Gilbert has because he comes from a football family, a deep-rooted football family. He's a good route runner, man. He gets in and out of his brace. He knows how to set stuff up. So I look at him and say, could play boundary, could play inside in the slots. You can mix and match these skill sets really well with a guy like Mike Gilbert.
That's a great point, because here's my only knock on Micah Gilbert, my only one. I love his polish. I love his hands. I love his athleticism. I love his feet. I love his strength. I love his toughness. I love his pedigree. Love all of it. He's not a burner. But you just said it, Ryan. You nailed it. It's about putting skill sets together to make one unit, right? It's like Voltron, right? You know, they all kind of come together and they have different strengths to one, you know, kick butt thing, right? Yes, I watched Voltron as a kid. But here's the deal.
Yeah.
You've got two burners already in the class. Two take the top off the defense guys already in the class. I wouldn't call Cam Williams a burner, but he's fast.
He can
right?
run,
And he can take the top off of a defense. Isiah Canion, to me, is a burner, especially at that size. You got two take the top off the defense guys that to me are great compliments to Micah Gilbert. And I said it yesterday. Isiah Canion and Cam Williams are two guys that if they get to 1,000 yards, they could do it on 60 catches, 55 catches, right? Micah Gilbert's the kind of guy that he's going to get to 1,000 yards by catching it 75 times, 80 times. Different types of players, great compliments, right? I need a home run shot, I'm throwing to Isiah, you know, over the top. If I need somebody that can win across the field, man, that's Cam, dude. If I need a guy, it's 3rd and 7, Micah, here you go. Let's get it. You know, that's my guy. And that's how you put a group together, not just landing. It's not just about landing individual pieces that are ranked wherever. It's about building a unit of complementary players. And that was a great point, Ryan. And that's what I feel even better. I don't even care about Micah Gilbert's speed right now because of what they've combined it with.
Yes.
Braylon James last year. Caleb Smith has some juice, just in a different way. And it's not like Rico and Jaden are slow. It's just like you're not recruiting them to just run post routes over the top all day, right?
Yep.
And then this class, Cam and Isiah are both guys who can take the top off the defense. So then you get a guy like Micah Gilbert. It's almost like now his speed isn't a hindrance. His overall game is now, this is the complement that you need to go to with those guys.
Yep.
And that's what I love about his game. And as you know, Ryan, he's been a guy I've been a big fan of for a while. And he would be a great compliment. Now, he's got a final 7. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Actually, let me just quickly look it up. But I know Michigan's on there.
Duke
I know that South –
North Carolina.
Duke makes a lot of sense. I mean, his brother had a lot of success there. But it's Michigan, South Carolina, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Duke, and Pitt are his 7 that he's down to right now. And so obviously Notre Dame will look to close that one out here on Tuesday and add another big-bodied receiver. It's obvious they're trying what kind of pro-style offense this team wants to be. They want to be able to throw the ball down the field and expand defenses. And that's why they're recruiting the guys that they're recruiting. But they're also not afraid to go out and get a smaller guy if he brings dynamic ability. That leads us to our next receiver. That's Jason Robinson Jr. We talked a lot about him yesterday, Ryan. Very intriguing guy, because if you look at him and you see his size, you're thinking shifty slot guy. He's one of the best route runners in the 24 class nationally. Forget Notre Dame guys. He's one of the best route runners in high school football. I mean, this is a kid that's got all the polish in the world. Another guy, another link that we're seeing with this staff. Hands. Great hands. You know, and so they're all hands catchers. great ball skills, great concentration. And Jason, as I've said before, if Jason Robinson was 6'1", 185, he's a top 50 football player.
Oh, yeah.
Easily. That's his only, like Micah Gilbert's only knock is long speed. Jason Robinson's only knock is size. But that's why I love the Jahan Dotson comparison, because he's a small guy that has the game of an outside receiver and can play outside because he's stronger than you think he is at his size, but he's got great quickness, great route running. He can get separation. And you mentioned this yesterday, Ryan. Don't get it twisted. He will outplay you for the football.
Oh, he will. Yep. I mean, and I think that's the biggest thing too, Brian, is like assumed deficiencies in his game are not really there. It's just one of those things where you have to be comfortable with the size and you have to be able to check off that box when Coach Bayless sees him, obviously, right? And like that's the biggest question mark that you're going to have for a guy like a Jason Robinson. And the great thing is, yeah, he might lack size, but you know who doesn't lack size? If you get to 4 in this class, the other 3 receivers that you have out there, right? So like you can find that size in other aspects and other areas in this class because you have already signed 2 skyscrapers and have a chance to get another one in Micah Gilbert here very soon. So everyone knows on this channel, even while he was still committed to the University of Southern California, I have been a big fan of Jason Robinson, and I've been telling people on the message board for some time now that, you know, even when he was committed to USC, don't count this one out for Notre Dame. Don't count this one out because Chancey Stuckey has been a guy that has remained consistent on this young man. And if they can push it to 4, would be a great addition, in my opinion, in this class because he brings, again, a different layer that others on this class don't have, right? Like they don't have a guy that looks like Jason. They don't have a guy that plays exactly like Jason. He would be the best route runner in this class. He would be a guy that really understands how to use his size to his advantage, right? And really understands how to play the game at an advanced level. This is the smaller version of Rico Flores in this class. That's who Jason Robinson is to me. So much nuance, so much just understanding of how to play the game. You can look at the size if you want, but at the end of the day, man, this kid plays in one of the talent-rich spots in the United States out there in Long Beach Poly. He plays against great competition. Dudes can't stop him. I mean, at the end of the day, man, that matters, right? At the end of the day, you want on-field production, right? Last 2 years, Jason Robinson has been super, super productive playing against some of the best football players in the country.
Yeah. I think that last part's interesting, too, because we're seeing that with a lot of these kids. Cam Williams plays against really good competition that has a lot of kids going Division I. Isiah Canion plays against a lot of future Division I football players in a big area. Same thing for Micah Gilbert. You know, he's from an area where you're going to Providence Day sends a bunch of kids to Division I football. Yes. And then, of course, Jason Robinson, who you mentioned. There's a lot of these kids that are just not out there dominating small time, you know, some little talent. And it's not a knock on them, but these are kids that you say, okay, I can measure them against other Division I football players.
That's what they did in 2023 as well with Greathouse, Rico Flores, Braylon James. Like they all come from talent-rich areas, and they were all productive in talent-rich areas.
Caleb Smith as well.
Another Texas kid, yep.
Yeah. So I really like it, Ryan. So that's going to wrap this part up. Obviously, big commitment for Notre Dame. Very important commitment for Notre Dame. Very excited about what this kid brings to the table. I'm actually kind of surprised at how excited fans are about this one. I thought there'd be a lot of. I haven't seen one 3-star comment yet. Maybe it's been in there, but this kid's really talented, and his ranking is coming around as we mentioned before. So big pickup for Notre Dame. Great job by Coach Stuckey, Chad Bowden, in this group to be able to find this kid and get on him early and get him in the class. Really big pickup. We're going to move on to some draft stuff or some Tyler Buckner, some draft stuff here in a second. But before we do, now's a great time to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and to share this podcast. And just to give you all a little bit of an update, since the beginning of the show, we have had 38 unique donations, and the family went from about $1,800 towards a goal of $7,500. They're now up to $3,400. So y'all are really helping to get that out there, really helping to do that. I've seen some people put some super chats in there. I'm just, for those who missed at the beginning, if you want to give a super chat, keep that money, give it directly to the family. I will kind of take the money that y'all are giving, and once YouTube tells me how much of that money we get to keep for Super Chat, I will then donate that money. So your money will go to the family. But if you, instead of giving a Super Chat, we'll put the link in there. Ryan, I'm actually going to put it in there again now so people will see it. But the link is in there. Just go to there, directly give. That way it's a lot easier for them to get access to that funds, and it doesn't have to go through me and all that type of stuff. So I want to thank you all, IB Nation, stepping up big time. I knew y'all would. And I'm incredibly humbled by just the amazing people that we have a part of this community. I really am. So I want to thank y'all for that as we get ready to transition to some other stuff.
So next talking point that we want to hit on, we'll get into some draft talk here very soon. But of course, there was a big update on the Tyler Buchner side of this conversation. If you haven't joined us the last couple of days, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind. 2 days ago, before we were about to start the show, Tyler Buchner announces that he is entering the transfer portal and he is taking a look at all his options. But he did leave it open in that post about Notre Dame being a potential option to keep an eye on, right? So yesterday, we had reported that option was on the table, that Notre Dame would like to have Tyler Buchner come back. And basically, it was coming down to he was going to visit Alabama, and it would be Alabama or stay at Notre Dame. Today, he makes the decision, obviously official, that Tyler Buchner is transferring to the University of Alabama to play with Tommy Rees, of course, who's now the offensive coordinator, former Notre Dame offensive coordinator. And Brian, I guess this is we're about to turn the page on this one now because everything is official. Tyler Buchner is a member of the Crimson Tide, which is a very curious move. Very curious move.
Well, it's I just kind of was getting a chuckle out of the Pete Thamel report that, the visit went so well that he canceled all his other visits. I'm like, come on, guys. Come on now. It was going to be Alabama or Notre Dame. He made the decision that he made. There's a couple responses I have to it, Ryan. And one is I've been very disappointed by some of the reactions from Notre Dame fans. Now, I just want to say this. It's not most. Most are great about it. There's just a couple. Yeah. The thing, he doesn't want to compete. A, if he didn't want to compete, he would have left in January. B, yes. If you don't want to compete, you don't go to Alabama. Come on. I don't like this move just for him personally. The only thing that fits at Alabama for him is Tommy Rees. That's it.
Yes.
I don't see this kid fitting in Tuscaloosa. I think this is a potentially really rough locker room situation because he doesn't have the pedigree that Sam Hartman's bringing into that locker room. He has less than 1,000 career passing yards. And you've got Jalen Milroe, you've got Ty Simpson, you've got the freshman that came in. There's a lot of question marks at quarterback for Alabama, and clearly they aren't incredibly confident in what they have now. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken any potential risk in the locker room and brought him in, because this isn't a Tommy Rees decision only. Tommy Rees can want whoever the heck he wants, but Nick Saban can say, no, we're not going to do that to our room. We have enough quarterbacks. Go coach those kids up. They clearly both are on the page of, yeah, we need to add another quarterback to this room. Maybe he wins the starting job. I hope he does for him. I'd like Tyler. I think he's a good kid. I think he's a better talent than Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe, both. I think he's probably the second most naturally gifted quarterback on the roster, with Dylan Lonergan being the guy that to me has the most God-given tools on that. Have you ever seen Dylan Lonergan?
Yep, baseball
His
player.
arm is unreal. Apparently, he's not going to play baseball anymore after that, which is huge for Alabama. But he does know the offense, right? And that's good. And I hope he can stay healthy. If Tyler's healthy, he's a talented kid that can do well there. But as long as the players are on board with having him there, that's my only concern. Is will he be embraced by the Alabama locker room? I hope he is, because I want him to be successful, but that's my concern. But he'll fit that offense fine. They're going to, from what I understand, Bama wants to run the football more, which is part of the reason that Tommy Rees was brought in. When I saw some interviews this spring, when Nick Saban is talking about Tommy Rees, he talks about the run game and what they're adding in the run game. There's one where he was talking about how they motion and shift. And I'm like, yep, Notre Dame fans know exactly what he's talking about there, how he uses motions and shifts and all that to gain leverage and all that kind of stuff. So, he's going to fit that. It's not going to be the pass heavy offense has been in the past, which is not where Tyler is. So I think, he'll have that confidence level there. I just don't know if this was a smart move, Ryan, because I'd be shocked if he's just locked in to be the starter. No question about it. Can he win the starting job? Yes, of course he can. Of course he can win the starting job.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a really interesting move because they're going to be splitting reps in the fall. And it's going to take away from the ability to make a faster transition, in my opinion. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Has nothing to do with Tyler's ability. It's just about the fit and the current circumstance. The talent for Buckner is there. We are not one of those people. Oh, he wasn't that good anyway. He's very talented. He's still developing. He has still room to grow. Notre Dame made the right decision bringing in Sam Hartman. Notre Dame made the right decision going with Sam Hartman. This is clearly Tyler saying, I wasn't going to beat Sam Hartman out. And that's okay. Yeah. That's not competing. If he didn't want to compete, guys, he would not be freaking transferring to Alabama.
Sure.
You know what I mean? This is just Tyler made a business decision that I understand. I just don't think it was necessarily the right one. That's my only thing with it for me.
And Tyler potentially put himself into a worse situation potentially too, Brian, because it's we talked about it yesterday. You sit behind Sam for a year at Notre Dame, and then you're probably the starter for at least 1 year, maybe 2, if depending how things shake out. At Alabama, he's going against a bunch of young guys, right? Like we're talking about redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore, and 2 true freshmen. That's what we're talking about with his competition in Alabama. If Tyler doesn't win the starting job this year, he's in some trouble, man, as far as his ability to start at the University of Alabama. I mean, he is. So, yeah, I mean, don't talk about the lack of competition. Obviously, he's betting on himself here that he's going to be better than Ty Simpson, that he's going to be better than Jalen Milroe, that he's going to be better than the 2 true freshmen that are coming in for Alabama, and one that we know has been playing well, Dillard Lonergan, in the spring. So, yeah, man, he's gambling on himself. So the competition thing, throw that out of the conversation. Yes. That's not a part of this. Tyler Buckner is betting on himself by going down to Alabama. He's
actually competing against more guys at Bama than he was at Notre Dame. At Notre Dame, it's like, I got to beat out one dude, number 10. That's it. Sam Hartman. That's it. Yep. At Bama, it's like, I got Ty Simpson. I got Jalen. Well, I don't think Jalen. I mean, he is the better version of Jalen Milroe. I mean, can we be honest about that, right? Like, he brings everything that Jalen Milroe does, but in more of a true quarterback skill set. I think that's fair.
And there's some rumblings about Milroe's future there.
He should. I mean, hopefully this is the kind of move that can have him go to wide receiver, where I think he has a future. Just at least athletically, potentially. Yeah. But it's Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe, who I don't see as being one, but then also Dylan Lonergan, who, again, if you all have not watched that kid play, he's raw as heck. But that kid, to me, had one of the 3 best arms last year. And that's – I'm talking about just like arm, just like power is what I'm referring to. Yeah. Like him and Nico are the 2 off the top of my head that just popped. Like, wow, this guy's just got a rocket for an arm. Nico is still, to me, at the top. I mean, Jaden Rashad is probably the other one. Jaden has a bazooka for an arm. I just don't know where the heck it's going to go. And Dylan's in that conversation as well. I mean, probably a couple other guys, but he's in that conversation. There were some howitzers in last year's class, Ryan.
Man.
They didn't all know how to throw. They didn't all know where it was going to go, but there were some absolute howitzers in last year's class.
Even some of the recruited guys, sort of like Jacoby Robinson, that's at Boston College now. Man, that kid had a cannon for an arm.
I mean, there were some cannons in last year's class, man. There's some guys like that, and Dylan is in that conversation of best arms. And when I say arms, again, I'm talking strength, power, potential. Where this year, it's Rayola's really the only bazooka that I've seen in this year's class. Yeah.
Yeah.
This year's class has more pure core. There's a lot more Dante-ish type of quarterbacks in this year's class, more natural quarterbacks, where last year was just a bunch of toolsy. Chris Vizina is another one. Chris Vizina needs a lot of work, but he's got a pretty strong arm.
Eli Holstein's got a strong arm too. I know.
Yeah, he's just not good.
He's got a strong arm.
He's just not good, right? He's got a really strong arm. He just isn't a very good quarterback. But yes, there's a lot of howitzers in last year. Tad Hudson, the kid going to North Carolina, it's another one with a really strong arm. And so that was a weird class in that regard, Ryan. Just like a lot of just cannons.
Yeah.
Just, but they're old school cannons, right? They're the ones you're not quite sure. They're not the guided missiles that you have nowadays. You don't know where it's going to go, man. But so it's yeah, you're right. It's more of a competition there than it is at Notre Dame. And as you said, every single kid that he's going to be battling against for that starting job is younger than him
Yes.
or in his grade, in referring to Jalen Milroe.
Yep.
Meaning if he doesn't get the starting job, you're a backup
It's
now.
gonna be tough, man.
So
It's
you're going
gonna
to
be
transfer
tough.
again? You're going to transfer again after next year? Now you're going to be on your third school in 3 years? I just to me, it didn't make a ton of sense, to be honest
Yep.
with you. If you
Agreed.
wanted to transfer now because you didn't want to stay at Notre Dame and all that, and that's fine, then go to Stanford. Go somewhere like that where you're the guy.
Yep.
This was not a great business decision, in my opinion. And I have no ill will on Tyler transferring. I'm not one of those people. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I'd rather him stay, but I understand it. I'm no ill will. I just think the fit's not right. I'll say this, Ryan.
Yep.
If Tommy Rees is not at Alabama, is there any reason whatsoever for him to consider Alabama?
No, there's not. That's
As a
really the only
quarterback.
thing is the familiarity. It's all
That's
it is, man. It's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, man, I am going to hope that Tyler does really well
Yeah.
in every game other than if they play Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the
I like
day,
Tyler.
yeah,
I
I've
like
never
Tyler. He's a
had
good
any
kid.
issue with Tyler Buckner,
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
Yep.
Talented
It's gonna be
kid.
interesting.
You never heard anything negative about him from a personal perspective. Like, good kid. I mean, yeah. So I hope he does well. I hope he does well.
Yeah. So that's it for that section, Ryan. So obviously Tyler Buckner off to Alabama, Notre Dame. Now, what does this mean for Notre Dame? If I had to bet right now, I think Notre Dame's going to stand pat, because here's the rub. You could go out and get a Ben Bryant, maybe a veteran guy to step in for Sam Hartman. The rub is, do we do that to guarantee this season's success, which it could, or we're going to always build for this year, but we also we can't completely ignore next year. And next year, Sam Hartman's gone. There is no more eligibility left for Sam Hartman. So you need to know what you have in Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie. And the best way to know that is to let them duke it out here this summer and fall. True. And see who that guy is. And then maybe have to go into the portal again next year if the need be, because CJ Carr is going to arrive next fall. The only thing that would make me change my mind on just hold out and just go with it is one of two things. You get some veteran kid that just wants to get into coaching, like Hunter Johnson, that kid that went to South Carolina that was going to be a GA.
Oh, Zeb Nolan's.
Yes.
Nolan's. Yeah.
Yes. It's something like that, where he's like, hey, look, you're not getting number 2 reps. You're here as an emergency quarterback to be a great teammate and locker room guy. I don't even know who that guy would be. That's a tough one to get to, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is if somehow CJ Carr calls me up. And I don't know if I would bring it up to CJ. But if CJ Carr called me and said, hey, I think I want to reclassify now. Those are the only 2 things I would look at as far as adding a quarterback. I really think you need to find out what you have in Angeli and Minchie. I really do.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if Angeli would be better than Drew Pine if he was thrown into the mix. I don't. But you kind of need to find out. I don't know if Kenny Minchie would do better than Drew Pine if he got thrown in the mix as a true freshman, whereas Drew Pine was a junior.
Yeah.
It's not about the talent. It's also about the development. But you kind of need to find out. Hopefully they don't find out in that regard. But those kids need to get those reps and let them duke it out.
Hopefully if it does come to that, hopefully he gets a little bit of reps against the Tennessee States of the world, the Navies of the world, right? Like it is
Central
built
Michigan,
in. It's built okay, nice the beginning of the season to maybe get some backup, a little bit of time for that development aspect. So hopefully, if that is what they choose to do, that guy is getting an opportunity to, like, let's give you some live action, right? Let's let you throw the ball around a little bit, see what it looks like, get the game speed conversation working a little bit. We'll say this though. 2024 just got a lot more interesting, didn't it?
Oh,
because we don't have a foregone conclusion in 2024. We have a bunch of talented kids, but who's going to be the quarterback? It's going to be a great conversation.
Well, here's what this move does. This ensures that Notre Dame will have a quarterback battle the entire 2023 season. Yes. It's just not for the starter.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, seriously, Steve and Kenny are going to spend the next year duking it out to see who starts the next spring as sort of that, who's the leader in the clubhouse.
QB1.
Or not. I mean, you want to make sure that, like, for Steve, he's got to separate himself a little bit from Kenny. He's got to take advantage of his year experience to separate himself from Kenny. who's to me the more talented player. For
Yes.
Kenny, he's got to make sure that Steve doesn't separate himself. Kenny's got to really change his mindset. I felt watching Kenny go through practice, he was just kind of like, I'm not playing this year. I'm just here to learn and get better. There was no urgency when I watched him play. There is now. So he's going to head into the summer saying, hey, bro, you're now battling to be that next guy in. Whereas before it was like you're battling to be the next guy in for the backup. You know what I mean? Like you're battling for the number 3 job. Now, dude, you got a chance to be the backup quarterback at the University of Notre Dame as a freshman with a 6-year senior in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to learn a lot about Kenny Minchie this offseason too. Like how much dog does he have in him, right? Like how much of that, oh, hey, you know what? I sniff out what's in front of me right now. And I'm about to take this thing to a whole nother level. My film sessions are about to be off the chains right now because I'm going to learn this offense in a hurry. You know, I'm competing in the weight room with a whole different mindset now. I'm going to go out there in 7-on-7s and 1-on-1s with a whole different mindset now. And Steve Angeli's doing the same thing.
Yep.
Right. And so Steve's not being handed the backup quarterback job. He's going to have to earn it. And if he does, you feel good about maybe he does have a little something. And then Kenny's going to be in the same way. So there is a quarterback battle that is happening now. There is no doubt. It's just not
an important one too.
Yes.
It's an important one.
It's just not for the starter anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. But it's going to be very fascinating. And I'm gonna have an article about that probably later today, maybe tomorrow. We'll have to see because we have a pretty busy day today, Ryan. Because we're about to go to the NFL draft stuff. We're gonna have a live show tonight. But yes, it's gonna be. And I got to mow the second half of my yard. So my yard was starting to get like, okay, it needs mowed. You know, the winter's over, and then we had like a week of straight just rain every day. And every time I'm going to go mow today, we get rain. And so like my poor dog Sadie goes out in the backyard and like, I'm like, babe, I got to try to find a way to mow the lawn because I can't see Sadie anymore, you know? And so I was able to get like half of it done last night, kind of all the areas where they go right in the side and all that. I got to go finish that. And then we have our draft show. So it's going to be a busy day. So it may not come out till tomorrow, but yeah, I'm going to have to
or the lawn might not get mowed until tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah, lawn's got to get mowed. Lawn's going to have to get mowed. All right, so that's going to do it for this part, Ryan. Hey, folks, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If for those of you that join late, we are doing a fundraiser today to help out little Brady and baby Brady, and that is the son of Jake and Abby, who are Notre Dame fans. Jake is in the chat with us today. And we are asking that in lieu of super chats today to Irish Breakdown, that instead you go to the link below. I'm gonna include it again here. And if you're able and willing to help donate to to Jake and Abby to help them with their medical bills and make sure that they have everything they need to continue to get baby Brady, who was in the NICU for I think 19 days or 19 weeks. I'd have to go look at the deal. 19 days in the NICU due to lung development issues. So, Ryan, you are a dad. You remember what that was like the first time. And this is their first child, I believe. Just the unknown of, is my baby going to be healthy? And all. And fortunately, I think Jules was, right.
Yes.
So I couldn't imagine. But you know, I'm and if you can give money, great. If you are a prayer person like I am, that is definitely encouraged as well. And ideally, both. And so that's why we've asked people to help out with that. So no super chats today. We would encourage you to give to those, and just a little update on that, how things have gone so far. They're now up to we've had 47 unique donations. Nice. And they're now up to $3,600. Actually, it's actually more than that because there was another page that somebody sent me that I donated to that has like $500 on it. And so so they're actually over 4,000 now, and their goal is 7,500. So we are, you all are definitely stepping up and helping them get to that point in time. So since our show has started, they've almost doubled what they've made, and that's because of you all. So thank you all so much for that, and we really help. We really help appreciate and pray that you're able to help out a little bit. I do want to bring this super chat up too. Shelton Hager says, Brian Ryan, sorry I haven't been able to catch the live shows. We're having our third baby girl next week. Thank you all for giving us the content to get through the week. Appreciate you, Shelton. Appreciate you very, very much. And congratulations, man. Good luck. I know this has been I'm sure, a journey for you all. You know what I mean? A very, very big journey. And I also want to say this before we move on the NFL draft. Antoine said, get you a tractor lawnmower, Brian. One of the best investments I've ever made. You got a lot of grass to deal with. My yard's not small, but it's not big enough to get a riding lawnmower. I just would feel like the biggest tool in the laziest. My lawn's just not. Ryan, you've seen my backyard. It's not riding lawnmower. It's not small, right? It's not small. Our dogs run around in it, but I just don't know, man. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So.
There was a great comment in the chat I wanted to bring up before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Who said it? Oh, no. Where was it? Oh, I can't find it. Someone said I thought that's what Vince's job was or something like that, but I couldn't find
that's
it.
So messed
oh, here
up.
it is. Here it is.
That's so jacked up.
Here it is.
Oh, that is so messed up.
Isn't that why you have Vince to mow the lawn? Oh,
that is so. I'm so telling Vince you said that too. So telling Vince you said that. But no, hey, we're gonna move. We're gonna move on to the next section too, folks. But before we do get to the NFL draft stuff, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. And before we go to the draft stuff, you need to take this transition time to go to the CFB Nation YouTube channel and subscribe, because tonight at 7:30 we're going to be doing a live draft show. So we are going to basically on the CFB Nation channel, as the draft happens, we're going to give our feedback, our analysis, talk about what these guys obviously were as college players. Ryan's going to talk about the fit, give you his draft analysis. And, you never know. We may grade some picks, as we kind of get to the end of it, just like, who won and handled trades. It's going to be our version of what you're going to see on TV and just being able to evaluate. We won't be able to have highlights and stuff like that because we want to, not get demonetized and not get dinged and all that kind of stuff. But we will give you our opinion of what we see in the NFL draft as we go. And we'll have a running tracker down there kind of as the picks are made and all that good stuff as well. So definitely want to join us tonight. And that's why you need to be on the CFP Nation YouTube channel and the podcast platform. So, Mr. Roberts, it's NFL draft time, buddy. We're going to talk about, obviously tonight, we do expect to hear at least one Notre Dame player's name get called. I've talked to a couple sources myself about, Isaiah Foskey and all that, but over the next few days, starts tonight, round one's tonight, day 2, Friday is rounds 2 and 3, and then Saturday is rounds 4 through 7. Notre Dame has several players in the mix to get drafted, and obviously tonight we expect it to get kicked off. We do expect Michael Mayer to be picked tonight. So, Ryan, I'm going to just kind of bring up some names of Notre Dame players. What I'd like for you to do is just kind of talk about the latest that you're hearing and some teams that you think would be good fits for these players. And of course, we'll start off with the guy that I'm pretty confident from what I've been told. I've talked to some sources that say it's going to be hard for him to get past that 25-26 area with the Cowboys and the Giants. Yeah. Between those two teams, there's no way he gets past that. So if the Bengals, who are at 28, 29, want to jump up or want to take him, they're going to have to move up. And I think that ultimately is what we can see happen. But just what you're hearing, Ryan, and the teams that you think would make the most sense for him from a fit standpoint.
Yeah, you hit on a couple already. For me, Michael Mayer is the most sure thing in this tight end class. And there's going to be some people that are going to, kind of create the assumption that a guy like a Dalton Kincaid and a Darnell Washington have higher upsides, for instance. And I think that we can have that conversation, right? Like, especially with Darnell Washington, for instance. Like, the kid's a freaky athlete, right? So, like, if you want to talk to me about upside and projection and all that great stuff, like, we could have that conversation. But we really missed the boat, I think, with Michael Mayer at times, with just how high the floor is with him. Him not being a good player at the NFL level is almost zero. Like, he is going to be a good player on the NFL level. And I think that he is good enough with his ability as a physical and competitive player, strong hands, plays well within his frame, that he could be a top 5 tight end in the NFL in a couple seasons. I think that he has that type of talent. What I'm hearing basically is I think the NFL is higher on Michael Mayer than what the media portrays out there. You'll see a lot of mock drafts nowadays where he's going in the second round and falling out of the first and all that type of conversation. What I'm hearing basically is the conversation starts happening around pick 13 with the Green Bay Packers because they have a massive need at tight end, man. Right now, their tight end room is Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis. which combined for a healthy 17 receptions last season as a tandem. So not the most proven tight end room at the Green Bay Packers. They also have a first-year starting quarterback, Jordan Love, who's going to be taking over this year. So quarterback's best friend, a big target over the middle of the field, a guy that you know is going to be a reliable option on the money downs. So 13, I think, is the spot that it starts. You mentioned already, Brian. I think the window is 13 to Green Bay, and then there's some conversations of like New York Jets are in that window at number 15. I believe they swapped picks with the Green Bay Packers. You talk about the New York Giants was another team. Buffalo Bills are one as well that I think makes some sense because they're trying to mix and match a little bit more 12 personnel. But the clock really stops with the Cincinnati Bengals at 28. And I know the Bengals fans are all really hopeful that he makes it there to pick 28 because, of course, where he grew up in Kentucky, that was like, 20 minutes from Cincinnati or something like that, right? Like it's right outside the border, I believe someone told me that. So I think it starts at 13 to 28. Michael Mayer will be picked somewhere in that window, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't follow the draft like you do, Ryan. But I will say this. Here's kind of my thing is we kind of see it almost every year where you start to see a lot of these NFL draft this guy that everybody thinks is the best guy. And all of a sudden you start seeing his game get picked apart. And I always wonder, is this a psyop, basically? By some team picking 24, 25 and to say, hey, let's convince people that we like this guy better. So then someone goes up and gets that guy. And then the guy we really want falls to us. I always kind of feel that because and the reason I say that kind of jokingly is, yes, Dalton Kincaid's a nice player. Darnell Washington, if there is no Brock Bowers, probably has decent amount more production and might be viewed to her different. Thank you. The thing for me is when I look at it, I just have a hard time with people that are trying to convince me that Dalton Kincaid is this better player than Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
And like I don't see the freaky athlete that you'd need to be better than Michael Mayer, in my opinion. Like I don't see a Travis Kelce, George Kittle type of athlete in Dalton Kincaid. And does he still have a time? Does anybody still have times on him? You know what I mean? Like
no times on him.
I look at the film and I see a kid that had a really big game against USC, but really struggled against some of the better teams the better defenses on their schedule, and plays in a league that's just not really defensive oriented. And then I watch Michael Mayer, who has like no help around him this past year, just go out there and there's nothing teams could do to stop him. And I just have a hard time. And he's only a junior. That's the thing. He's only a junior.
And he's younger.
Yeah. People act like Michael Mayer is like this, 23-year-old, fifth-year senior, veteran guy, and just Dalton Kincaid's like this little kid, and Dalton Kincaid's 23 years old.
Yep.
He's going to turn 24 during the season. Michael Mayer's 21.
Second youngest tight end in the class, Michael Mayer, by the way. Second youngest tight end.
So I just if that stuff is real, then there's just some people that just like to a degree, like I said, if there was if Dalton Kincaid was like this really twitchy athletic guy and your offense required a different skill set than Michael Mayer, then I would understand it. But I just don't see that with him. I do want to ask you this as we wrap up Michael Mayer, Ryan, is when you look at the transition in the NFL, because that's the big thing is I know what he could do at Notre Dame.
Sure.
I'm asking you, you watch a lot more NFL than I do. What are the 3 or 4 things that you really look at and say, these are the things that translate the best for Michael Mayer as he looks to making an impact on that next level? Basically, why should teams look at him and draft him? What are the traits that you're selling as to why you think he's got a chance to be a really good NFL tight end?
Well, I think it's a really important question, especially because tight end is actually one of those positions that there are some tough transitions sometimes for whatever reason. And I mean, I think it's the physical, obviously, side of the game. Tight ends sometimes aren't super productive right out of the gate. I mean, the Kyle Pitts having 1,000 yards as a rookie is an oddity. Like that doesn't typically happen. I mean, Travis Kelce's breakout year was in year 3, I think I remember correctly. George Kittle's breakout year was year 2. Like not usually. You guys don't usually just step in day one and they're like consistent playmakers at tight end. It rarely ever happens. What translates for Michael Mayer's game that I think will be an instant impact to an NFL team? I think one is his ability to be a red zone target. I think that day one, Michael Mayer, I could see him being a Pat Freiermuth rookie year in a vacuum, because Pat was a guy that coming out of Penn State had to develop some parts of his game. But at the end of the day, he was big and he was physical, right? So you knew in the red zone, he could win the ball at the catch point and he could work through traffic. So I think his ability to impact the red zone is going to be a big thing for Michael Mayer. And that all kind of parlays itself together. I think the other big thing with him is that there's going to be a dependability about Michael Mayer. The only time Michael Mayer has ever struggled with drops were concentration drops. They weren't with a lack of hand strength and ability to win through the ladder. Like, he has that upside to him as far as he is a guy that can win through contact consistently on the.
And those drops are not what we saw this year, Ryan. Those were gone this season. Like, they were first. Like, I remember that one drop he had against Clemson in 2020, and it was a bad drop.
Yes.
But to your point, it's because he was trying to catch and run already.
Yep.
It was and it was things like that, Ryan. It was not, oh, gee, he got outplayed for the ball. It was nothing like that. It was something like that. And this year, I thought what was impressive too is he did all that with so much more focus of the defense this season.
Yes.
Because you didn't have to worry about a Kevin Austin like you did last year, and some other aspects of it. So I thought that was a big part too. And Pro Football Focus has him down for having 4 drops on the season. That's it. But 2 of them came against UNLV. So he wasn't a guy that really had a lot of drops in his career. They were obvious ones. And his highest drop rate was his first year. He had 5. He had 3 last year. He had 4 this year. I don't remember 4 drops, to be completely honest with you, this season. I only remember 2.
And I would say the last thing that really translates is his ability as a route runner. I think that's maybe the most underrated aspect of Michael Mayer's game. For as big as he is, for his hulking, for a guy that you would think is kind of a lumbering straight line athlete, he really gets in and out of breaks well, man. I think he understands how to run routes. And I think that is going to take a lot of people off guard on the NFL level from a defensive perspective. When I talked to Brandon Joseph at the Combine, that was one of his remarks. It actually might have been me that asked him what makes Michael Mayer special. And his first thing was, that dude is the best route runner I've ever gone against. And I was like, that says a lot, because he played against Ohio State with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and those cats, right? I mean, so he's seen some good route runners. And I really think that we underrate that Michael Mayer is going to be able to create some separation short to intermediate, because he is a very good route runner for his size.
Let's talk a little bit about Isiah Foskey, Ryan. Obviously, this was a guy that a year ago was getting almost universally projected to be a first-round pick, which tells me 2 things. Number one, don't listen to mock drafts ever, but definitely a year away. And number 2, that even though the statistics were really impressive, the film for Isiah Foskey this year wasn't as good as it was a year ago. This isn't just about some other guys breaking out. His film, we talked about it during the season, his film was not as good as his numbers this season. But what the Combine also showed is this is a very unique athlete, size, speed, power athlete that is one of the bigger enigmas in this draft. Like, if you're talking about, he's got great size, length, power, athleticism checks, and great production, and yet no one's talking about him being a first-round pick, which I find absolutely fascinating. What's the latest that you're hearing? I've heard it's unlikely he gets past the bottom of the 2nd round, is what I've been told by a couple people I've talked to, and I know you've talked to a lot more. So I'm curious kind of what you're hearing, and maybe some teams that you could see jumping up and trying to get Isiah Foskey.
Yeah, it's very similar feedback, which I put into an article, obviously, at irishbreakdown.com. I think for me, there was a hope before the season that he was going to take a step forward and he was going to be a slam dunk first round pick. Because to your point, Brian, I mean, the kid is a 6'5" and an eighth, 264 pounds, 34-inch arms, ran 4.58 at the Combine at that size. It's like, that kid is a freak show from a talent perspective, from a physical perspective. But kind of in the middle and towards the end of the season, I'm getting feedback as well, where people are saying he's more of a third-round guy than he is of a first-round guy, just with basically based upon the film this past season. And I think when you went to the Senior Bowl, you saw a little bit of the same thing as far as there's some really nice stuff, but then there's maddeningly inconsistent reps. And it's just, he isn't developed to the point that you would expect from a fourth-year player. Like, he just isn't quite there yet. But then I think the combine makes people forgive some of those things sometimes, right? It's like that kid still has a lot of upside. I mean, he was only a 2-year starter at Notre Dame. He still has substantial upside that he can get to. It's just about, like, there needs to be like a conversation that needs to have, like, Isiah, we understand that you can go straight down someone's chest occasionally and win because you're long and you're explosive and you're powerful. But if we add this move, that move consistently in your game and you buy in, you could be a star. You have star potential. You have star talents. So I think that we're meeting somewhere in the middle from what we thought was a first-round player eventually at one point and the third-round evaluations we were hearing early on in this process. I think that second round is the spot for Isiah Foskey when all is said and done. I think that people are going to say, yes, the film wasn't consistent, but the upside is still immense. And at the edge position, at defensive end, that's a spot where you gamble on traits so often because we have seen those guys who were, and Isiah was productive, so it's not like a lack of production, but the guys that maybe weren't finished products coming out of college develop so much quicker once they get NFL coaching. It happens all the time. The Neil Hunters of the world, where it's like you had like 4 sacks at LSU, and then all of a sudden you're a double-digit sack guy every single year because you learned how to play the position better. So I think second round, some of the teams that I would have an eye on, and it's because this is a specific type of pass rusher. He's long, he's powerful, he's explosive, but he's not the bendiest of all time. This is a speed to power kid. So what teams have done well with that in the past? I think of the Green Bay Packers as a team that have liked the Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith type of rusher. Who else is like that guy? Baltimore Ravens. They've had guys like Matthew Judon. They've also had Zadarius Smith. That's their style of pass rusher. A team that I think really needs help but won't be able to probably go edge in the first round is the Chicago Bears, who pick at 9, but they have an offensive tackle need so heavily they'll probably go offensive tackle with the 61st overall selection. If Isiah gets there, I think it's a foregone conclusion. The Chicago Bears last year, Brian, had 20 sacks as a football team last year. Their leading sacker
games.
Leading sacker, Jaquan Brisker, rookie safety, who had 100 tackles and 4 sacks for them. 4 sacks was their leader. They didn't have a defensive end over 3.5. So they need massive help from a pass rush perspective. I think Isiah Foskey is going to learn on the job a little bit in that type of situation, but immediately from day one, he's the Bears' most talented pass rusher, like immediately. So Bears, Packers, I think that the Baltimore Ravens are a team that make a lot of sense. Philadelphia Eagles, I think, is another team that has valued that type of rusher. Think about the Michael Bennett's of the world, the Brandon Grahams of the world. They like that style of speed to power converter as well. So that's a few teams that I think make a little bit of sense for Isiah.
So if I'm getting your NFL draft math correct, Ryan, 3rd to 4th round film, 1st round talent equals 2nd round.
2nd round. Split the difference.
Yep. Yeah. I think there's a little bit more to it than just the film. I'll be honest with you. I think there's a little bit more that's hurting Isiah as well, and that is him. He has had a very odd draft prep season.
Very.
Michael Mayer was asked a question at the combine about, fit and all that. And he just said, look, I'll do whatever, play whatever. And then you get Isiah Foskey, who basically says, I want to play with my hand in the ground and do that. Okay. So you just told all the teams that have require their edge players to be in a 3-point stance that they probably shouldn't draft you. Mistake. Then he talks about how, well, I just want to run through people. Well, yeah, we saw that on film, dude. And then you start hearing some of the stuff about the fact that he wasn't the most coachable dude in the world this past year. And you start to say, you wonder, did some of the success last year get to his head a little bit? But he's had a very odd offseason in that regard, to where the biggest missteps he's had this offseason have been self-imposed, Ryan, with some of the comments he's made. Like, what was the comment he made? Was it the Senior Bowl?
It was at the combine.
It was also at the combine?
Yeah.
You're just like, buddy, did no one prepare you for this?
Yep.
Like, did no one prepare you on, like, that you don't say things that are gonna basically tell NFL teams, "Don't draft me"? And, I mean, if you're Bryce Young, you can do that. "Hey, I don't wanna play in Carolina." So you know, but dude, that's not you, man. So he's had a very puzzling offseason as well, and it
He's
makes a lot of sense when you hear things that we heard about the regular season as well and his coachability, because he's a good kid. I just
yeah.
think he got a little bit, I don't even know what word to use, but it was not. He didn't have necessarily the same level of coachability. How about that he had in the past?
His mindset is the puzzling part of this conversation for me. Because I think if Isaiah is open to it, again, I think he has star potential at the next level. And he's even been working with Brandon Jordan, Brian, who is a pass rush specialist. I mean, he literally just got hired by an NFL team because he is so well thought of in that area. And despite working with him, he goes to the combine and he still talks about how he just wants to barrel down someone's face and be a power rusher. I'm just like, I don't know if you quite get it yet. And hopefully he gets it, because if he gets it, could be a star. I mean, we could be talking about Justin Tuck 2.0 here. Like, we could be.
Yeah.
He could be that type of impactful player. But I think there's some self-realization that needs to happen with Isaiah and say, hey, man, everyone's going to get – who are the guys that you struggled against this year? The big, strong offensive tackles, right? The Paris Johnsons, the Juan Jones, Matthew Bergerons to a degree, right? Like, those were the guys you struggled against.
Stanford, who not coached well, but super long and talented, right? I mean, because wasn't that the first game? Was it Miles Hinton that was came back for that game, and then Rouse was out?
I think so, yeah.
But he couldn't do
Rouse
anything
was
against
out.
Miles Hinton because he's super long.
And Blake Freeland's for BYU.
Yeah.
He didn't do much against Blake Freeland either, who's another one of those big, strong offensive tackles. So you look at that, man, and say, Isaiah, you know who has those types of guys in the NFL level? Every single team has those guys. So you're not going to just be able to win with speed to power consistently. Trayvon Walker found that out last year in his rookie year when he only had 3.5 sacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You need to have nuance. You need to fix those hands up a little bit better. You need to play with more of a pass rush plan. We've been talking about this for months, even before last season, that you need to develop more of a pass rush plan. If he realizes that and he buys in, star potential. How many guys there's not many guys in the world that are 6'5 plus, 34-inch arms, 260 plus pounds, and run a 4.5. Like, just aren't that many guys in the world. His talent is outrageous. It's just about buying in to the process of getting there.
That's right. Let's move on, Ryan. Next guy I want to talk about, next Notre Dame player, is Jarrett Patterson. He's another guy that finds himself in a very similar situation to Foskey in that a year ago, you had some people projecting him to be a potential first-round pick, number one center in the draft. He has another injury. He deals with an injury in the offseason that cost him, I think, a lot of the summer workouts, also cost him part of fall camp. He did not start against Ohio State, came back against Marshall. Clearly, for at least 2 or 3 games, he was not 100%. But he kept battling and kept pushing through and ended the year on a pretty solid note. Now he's viewed quite differently. I'm seeing anything, 4th, 5th round even as far as down to that level. So let's talk about sort of what you see in Jarrett Patterson and kind of what you think his range could be for tonight. And the other part of it is, are NFL teams looking him now as more of a center, more of a guard, or more of a swing guy, or does it vary from team to team?
I think it varies from team to team in the sense of between center and swing, right? And I think that for me, I view him as a center because I think that that's just the most natural spot that I've seen him play at Notre Dame. I don't think that he's a true guard because I do think that he's not the most powerful player of all time, right? And that's one concern I have with playing guard consistently is that you need to be a little bit of a people mover in the run game and at the point of attack. I don't necessarily see Jarrett is that. I think Jarrett's a clean mover. I think he works up the second level well. I think he combos to the second level well. Like, I think he does those things really well in his game. And I think he can mirror in pass protection pretty well. But I don't think that he's a powerful player. So I think he's a center that can look at and could say to teams, I've also have experience with playing a guard. So if you need me in a pinch, I can do that stuff, but I'm probably a center mostly and then a potential swing inside. So I think that varies team by team. I mean, quite simply, when it comes to Jarrett, I question if just some of the athleticism has been zapped a little bit from the durability stuff. I question a little bit.
Because of all the injuries and
because of all the
like
injuries.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like when he was younger, he just seemed like a little bit better of an athlete than what he is now to me. I don't know if that's being maxed out. I don't know if that's because of some injuries. I mean, there's a lot of things that can parlay into that. Ultimately, he has a lot of things working for him here, right? You're a 4-year starter. You've started at multiple positions, and you come from the University of Notre Dame. All those things matter, right? So I think that is it out of the realm of the possibility that some team late in the third round says, you know what? I'm taking Jared Patterson. It's possible. It's possible. But if you ask me today, where would I project him to go? I think he's a 4th to 5th round guy. I think that's where he ends up going. Okay. Because of some concerns, one, durability, we've talked about. That's big, right? Availability is the best ability. And especially if you're a backup offensive lineman, I want a backup offensive lineman that's available consistently, right? Like that's a position where I want that guy ready to go just in case something happens. He's had some durability concerns. There's also some teams that are looking at him and say, we know you played guard, but you're not going to play guard at the next level because you have sub 32-inch arms. So there's going to be some teams that do that. They're just going to throw him off the board. You're not a guard. You're a center only. Cool. With that stuff all in mind, and the fact that Jared just kind of leveled off in his career and just stopped getting better after his first couple seasons, I think you're looking at a guy that's resting more on resume than what the actual product on the field is right now. And I still think that he has merit to him. Again, tough kid, center. I think he still has some potential to develop into that regard. But I think he's a 4th or 5th round player because he has the background of playing multiple positions, Notre Dame stamp of approval, and we know that Notre Dame guys have been able to last. And I'll say it like this. Sam Mustipher started some games in the NFL with the Chicago Bears. I think Jared Patterson is a more talented player than a Sam Mustipher. So could he find a spot where he eventually is a starter? It's possible, but I just think there's more limitations on Jared Patterson's game than I once thought maybe there would be at this point in his career.
Do you think that right now his thing is going to have to be, hey, find a home, be a backup, wait for your opportunity, and step into a starting lineup? That's pretty much what I'm hearing you say.
I think that there was one point where I thought, especially after his redshirt freshman and redshirt sophomore years, that if he continued to develop on a good pace exponentially, that he would be an early starter in the NFL whenever he decided to make that jump. I don't envision it the same anymore. I think that he's a guy that needs to find his niche, find a role as a backup, and if the right spot opens up and he does well, then he's a guy that maybe could be a starter sometime in the 3rd, 4th year. Like I think that's kind of where his role is. But I think early on, he's a guy that's going to need to latch on to a roster spot with his ability to be versatile and to be dependable. Those are things that are needed.
There were 4 guys last year, Ryan, for Notre Dame that were getting first-round mock projections. We've talked about the first 3. The 4th was Brandon Joseph, who probably had the biggest fall based on production. However, I have seen a couple mock drafts that have him going still in the 3rd round. Where I'm just telling you what I read. Where do you see things for Brandon Joseph? What's the latest that you're hearing on him? And is it just that he's got the potential to be that guy, or just maybe that 1 year was sort of a bit of a fluky year because of the COVID year? What are your thoughts on Brandon Joseph? And then positively also, after you answer those questions, is, what could a team be getting at Brandon Joseph if he can get back on track? So let's first start off with what you're hearing and maybe some of the potential places for him to land.
I'll say this about Brandon. I really want to believe in Brandon because there is some good film to back up on. And I will say he's one of the smartest kids that I had the opportunity to talk to at the combine. I really think that he is a really smart football mind. For whatever reason this year, and I know some injury related, some not injury related, Brandon Joseph was not a dependable football player for Notre Dame, and he was not a consistent impact player. He had 2 very impactful football games and a whole lot of nothing for his Notre Dame career. That's what we had here for Brandon Joseph. My pulse on this is that I think he still potentially gets drafted, but I think it's more in the 5th to 7th round conversation. I think he's a late day 3 flyer at this point because there's some concerns here, obviously. One is the durability from this past year. He didn't play. He barely played, and he shut it down, right? Those are things that we need to talk about of why you also shut it down. You were available to return punts during a game, but you weren't available to play defense. That was a little bit of a weird situation. Let me talk to you. Number 2 is that his play has been declining over the last couple of years. Excellent in 2020, solid in 2021, but inconsistent, and not great in 2022. That's kind of
Although
the
he did have
trajectory.
2 really good games.
2 very good games, very
Like,
impactful games.
Ohio State, he was pretty good. And then Syracuse, he was very good.
Yes.
And then there's just a bunch of after that.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's a guy that, for me, I really wanted him to have a good process. He went to the East-West Shrine game, was just kind of invisible all week, man. It wasn't bad necessarily, but it wasn't like, are you making plays this week, man? Like, are you here? Are you locked in? Like, are you ready to go? And then he goes to the combine and it's just a bad showing. And he had a better showing at his pro day, which was good to see. I mean, somehow he went from a 30-inch vertical at the combine to like 34 inches at his pro day, which is like, that's an insane incremental jump. But I really think for me, Brian, it's like he's a dart throw at this point in this process. I'm not sure, and this is my personal opinion, this isn't intel. I'm not sure I would draft Brandon Joseph right now. I'm not sure I would. I think that there are still some things that you like. I do think that he's proactive. I think he has good eyes, but the missed tackles that have plagued him over the last couple of years are substantial, and then he's gotten less productive each of the last 2 years. So I look at those things, man. That's just a lot of more questions than answers right now for Brandon Joseph. So I think he's a day 3 dart throw and a late day 3 dart throw. I think there's still something to look at there, but also I'm like, he's a thinner built guy that has missed a lot of tackles. If I'm drafting him on day 3, you know what that means he has to do, right? He's got to play special teams. Is he a guy that you're going to consistently want on kick and punt coverage? I'm not 100% sure about that either, right? So he's just a little bit of a dart throw for me. I would consider it late, but I'm not so sure I would draft him at this point.
Let's talk about Jason Adamiola, Ryan, and Justin Adamiola here now as we kind of get into this. Now we're kind of getting into the range of guys that hope can sneak into the back end of the draft, but guys that right now, from everything I'm hearing and people that I've talked to, and I hope that they are incorrect on all of these next few guys that are most likely going to be undrafted guys. But let's just talk a little bit briefly about Jason and Justin, kind of what you see with them, and then we'll finish up with Tariq Bracy. But let's talk about the Adamiola twins. Any kind of what's their offseason been like, and kind of where do you think that they slide in over the next couple, or where do you think they slide in at over the next few days?
Jason is such an interesting evaluation, Jason Adamiola. And I think that it's partly this, Brian, right? Like, we've seen some flashes of really nice stuff at Notre Dame over the last 2 years. There's been some good, without question. And he's a really talented kid, right? Like, he moves well. He's got good length, surprisingly, for the size that he plays. And he went down to the East-West Shrine game. He went down to the NFLPA Bowl in Pasadena. And I talked about how Brandon Joseph didn't really impact the East-West game at all. Jason actually had a really good week at the NFLPA. He looked good. He looked really good out there. And he was impactful in the football game. He had a tackle for loss and a sack on the first drive of the game. Like, he looked good that week. Goes to the pro day. Numbers were okay. Nothing really jumped out, though, to you. I expected him to test a little bit better as an athlete. But regardless, I think we're in the spot here, Brian, and we talked about this before the season. Production matters, especially when you're Jason Adamiola, who is 280 to 285 pounds and will have to play 3 technique. He's going to have to be an attack style, 1 gap level player. And in that regard, you got to make some plays, man. You got to make some plays in the backfield, tackle for loss, some sack production, at least some pressure production. And it just wasn't consistent in that regard. So he, unfortunately, I think, is a very role-specific player at the next level. Like, some teams are just not going to love him, right? Like, they're not going to love him as a nose. They're not going to love him as a consistent 2-gap player. He is a 1-gap style penetration player that, in the right system, I think can stick. I think he has the potential to get drafted really late. I think 6th or 7th round to priority free agent. But he does have a chance to stick, because I do think he's talented. It's just about develop it, man. Develop it. Be consistent with it, because it just hasn't been consistent, obviously, over the last couple of years.
The thing for me with Justin Ryan, or with Jason, is the production never matched the ability. and he just never improved in some of the areas where he needed to improve. He just never got better at being a closer. You know, he wasn't that. I won't say he was ever hurt. I'll give him credit for this. He played through a lot of injuries. Like he played through a lot of pain, and answered the bell as often as he could. I mean, he wanted to try and play in the bowl game, and people are like, "No, man, no." Like he had nothing to prove. He wanted to play in the bowl game. But you look at a guy, if you're going to be 6'3", 285,
yep,
you have to be a disruptive player and produce. And if you look at Jason's career, he played 5 years because of the COVID year. He was able to play all 5 years. I mean, so he never had a red shirt. He had 1.5 tackles for loss and a half a sack as a freshman. 4 tackles for loss, no sacks as a sophomore. 1.5 tackles for loss and a half a sack as a junior. And that was a year he did only play 8 games that year. That was the 2020 year, and just didn't produce. But I'll say this, he was phenomenal in the Rose Bowl against Alabama. And so you start thinking, like, I mean, he destroyed Alabama's guards the entire game. I mean, just whipped their butts from start to finish. And that's tape that you can send a team, say, look what he's capable of. But then the response is going to be, then why didn't we see this more?
Right.
Like, where was this guy all the time? And then he comes out and we're thinking, oh, because, I mean, look, we sold Jason Ademilola to people all the time because I just was always waiting on that breakout to come. And I'm thinking after the Alabama game, he's going to build on that next year. And he goes out and has 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 49 tackles, which is a good season, a couple pass breakups. Then he makes the decision to come back for a 5th year. And you're thinking, okay, now we're going to really get a chance to see him kind of make that jump. And it just never came. He had 29 tackles, which was down from 49. He had 6 tackles for loss, which was slightly down, 3 sacks, which was slightly down, and just wasn't the disruptive player. And a lot of his production kind of faded down the stretch, a lot of it because he was injured. And he did have a couple tackles for loss against USC, but, he had 3.5 tackles for loss in the first 5 games. And then the rest of the way, in the last 6 games, he had 2.5, and 2 of them came against USC.
Yep.
So you just never saw him take that jump. You never saw him take that leap. And I think that's the thing that's ultimately going to hurt him, is because people are going to – his size isn't great, but I think he could play, in a 3-4 defense and kind of be an end. He's a guy that has athleticism, has the explosiveness and the things that you kind of look for, but he just never could produce the way that you expect a guy his athleticism to produce. Maybe someone will see him and say, hey, look, but he could produce for us because I can teach him to do this, this, or this. Maybe. I hope so.
It's possible.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Justin Ademilola is also obviously, I think we both agree. I'll say this. You might disagree. If so, it's fine. But I think Justin sticks in the NFL on a team. I think Justin's going to be a guy that's a special teams player. I could be wrong. Special teams guy. Someone's going to sign him. They're going to see the motor, special teams kid, and all that kind of stuff. I'll predict him. I wouldn't be shocked if he sticks in the NFL as sort of like kind of like in the same way Jameer Jones did. You know what I mean? Like a very similar. They remind me a lot of each other. And Justin actually was the more consistent player than Jason was. He just doesn't have Jason's God-given ability, in my opinion. But I think Justin has a chance to stick somewhere. I'd be shocked if he gets drafted. I hope he does. Be shocked if he gets drafted. But I could see him signing and finding a home somewhere. At least that's kind of my hope anyway.
Yeah. I mean, anything's possible in the draft world, right? I think that he is definitely a free agent type, though. I don't think you'll hear his name drafted. He just gets in that weird little realm of undersized pass rusher who also isn't that twitchy, right? And usually you don't want both of that to happen, right? Either you want to be a big dude or you want to be a super twitchy dude. When you're not either, it's a tough sell sometimes because then it's all about hand usage and pass rush plan. And he has some of those variables, which
because his motor, Ryan, and his hand play is outstanding.
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
But that gets negated somewhat in the NFL when you're 6'2", 250, and not a super athlete.
Right. When you're going against the Trent Williams of the world and those caliber of players, like it's just a different animal. Yeah. So I hope for the best for Justin because he's a try-hard kid. I think he works hard, plays hard. It's one of the guys you root for, but it's just the lack of traits I think could hurt him to stick potentially.
Yeah. Let's wrap up, Ryan. I want to talk about Tariq Bracy because I feel bad for him. I thought he was going to have a much better pro day than he did. Now he actually had some good testing numbers and some of the agilities and stuff, but I really thought
His
he was going to
vertical
run.
was good.
Yeah, I really thought he was going to have a 4.4. He ran that throughout his Notre Dame career. Ran a 4.5. I think that hurt him a little bit combined with the size. But he's a guy, too, that I really hope is able to get picked up by somebody because I think Tariq Bracy can play. I think Tariq Bracy was outstanding for Notre Dame this year. Outstanding. And as a nickel cornerback, I think he's a guy that could end up being the Brock Wright, Tommy Kramer type of undrafted guy that you're like, how'd that guy go undrafted? Like he's a pretty good, role player for that team. That's what I think. I think when you look at the athleticism, and it's not just speed, he plays faster than he timed. And I've been told his whole career at Notre Dame, he's times in the 40s, in the 4.4s his entire career. I think Notre Dame has a slow track. That's the kind of reputation their new indoor facility is getting, is that it's a slow track, and you're not seeing guys improve. Like from the pro day, a lot of teams guys will go to the combine, they run their time, and then they go to their pro days and they run faster. That's not happening at Notre Dame because they have a slow track. Yeah. And it's not Matt Balis because they're not working out with Matt Balis. They're working out with their professional people that train, and it's because of the track, in my opinion. So something Notre Dame needs to look into. But having said that, I think this is a kid that has ability that I'll put it like this. I don't know this from an NFL standpoint, but having watched certain guys in college and now seeing that they're actually NFL players now, I'll be surprised if Tariq Bracy's not playing the NFL for a little bit. I think athletically, I think his coverage instincts this year were really good. I watch him battle with Josh Downs all game. Josh Downs won a couple. Tariq won a bunch. And I'm like, he can play at that level, in my opinion. He just never got just never could, I don't know, catch that kind of momentum as far as as a prospect. I don't know what it is. I want to hear what you have to say. I kind of gave my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say about Tariq Bracy. And if you think he's a guy that should be viewed, higher than he is, or if you think that there's something missing that I'm missing. Because again, I'd say this to you because Ryan, because you do watch NFL a lot more than I do. And so you would be able to say, hey, here's why, Ryan, I think that maybe you're missing this part.
Well, I think the curious part of the Tariq Bracy thing is that I would have thought after the season he had that he would have gotten some All-Star invites, and it didn't come for whatever reason. I mean, I didn't necessarily anticipate a Senior Bowl invite, but I was like, East-West Shrine, possibly, NFLPA Bowl. I mean, just none of those major All-Star games ever pulled the trigger, right? And that's usually based upon, call it what it is, right? Those games, those invites come because the NFL tells these games who they want to see at these events, right? So for whatever reason, Tariq was underrated to that extent. I think the pro day, actually for me, Brian, I don't care that much about the 40 time actually because he's a nickel, right? I care much more about that short area stuff. Did you change direction well? Are you explosive in tight quarters? And he checked those boxes. He did well in all the other areas that are more important for nickel. I would say this to the evaluation aspect of it, because I agree, actually. I think that I would not be shocked at all if Tariq Bracy stuck in the NFL for a couple years. I would not be shocked at all. The climb that he has, though, which is why he's underrated, in my opinion, is that the nickelback position, despite being basically a starting position in today's game, is still undervalued for whatever reason. I mean, the best nickels in the NFL are either day 3 football players or they're undrafted free agents. I mean, the best nickel in the NFL right now is probably Kenneth Moore, who is an undrafted free agent. He's probably the best one. They just don't tend to put heavy value into that position from a draft perspective yet. And I think that will change eventually. But I think that that's the reason that Tariq Bracy is probably going to be a priority free agent. Could he get a 7th round draft slot? I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be like, all right, that's cool. You took a dart throw at a kid that had pretty good film last year. That might only be a nickel only. So it's more important for me about Tariq is when you get that opportunity, because he's going to get an opportunity, whether that is as a 7th rounder or as a priority free agent, he's going to get an opportunity to play at the NFL. It's about seizing that opportunity for him at the end of the day. And just not a kid that I would necessarily bet against after what he did the last 2 years. I mean, going into the 2021 season, Tariq Bracy could have nailed it in, man, and been like, dang, brother, it just wasn't meant for me, right? Played good football in 2021, and then he played outstanding in 2022, played high-level football. So he's a guy that, through adversity, has also shown, I'm going to keep fighting back here, right? I'm going to keep getting better. So I think there's resiliency there, and I think there's still talent there to be a nickel at the next level. So I think that ultimately it's probably a priority free agent nod, but I do think that he'll get an opportunity to play at the next level, and I think that he has the makeup to last on the NFL level because I think he's just – there's something about him, man. There's a competitiveness that you like about a Tariq Bracy.
Agree. Last guy I actually want to talk about. My heart broke when Bo Bauer tore his knee up this year because my contention was always this is a kid that's going to be a surprise 7th round draft pick for people. They're like, how did Bo Bauer never start at a line? Because he was a special teams star that some team was going to be like, do I just draft some 5th receiver? Like, or do I take this guy that could be a special teams captain for me in 2 or 3 years? And some teams do that. I mean, you see it all the time, right? You see linebackers get picked in round 6 or 7. You're like, why is this guy getting picked in 6 or 7? Like, this guy wasn't even very good because he's a great special teams player, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also felt, because what I'd always contended is Bo would have ran fast for his size. Like, he would have been in the high 4.5s, maybe like 4.6 range as a speed guy. And obviously that's not happening now because of the knee injury. Couldn't test at the pro day. But you know what you saw him over there doing?
Knocked out the bench,
oh my
man.
Gosh, did he? Did he? But you know what he was doing at the pro day, though? Long snapping. Yep. Yeah. I mean, because that's just kind of the kid he is. He's going to look, I want to keep playing football, and I'm going to find a way to play football. And $20, Bo Bauer, in 3 years, Bo Bauer, somebody starting long snapper. Like, that's just what that kid's going to – you know it, right? You know he's going to work at it and get really good at it, Ryan. You just know it. Yeah. And what a great cover guy running down there and covering stuff, a guy like Bo Bauer. He's a guy that I wish could have got a chance to play. And then another guy that I forgot to mention, Ryan, who I'm very curious to see what the interest level is for him in after the draft, is Chris Smith. Yeah. I feel like Chris Smith made himself a legit NFL option for teams by his year at Notre Dame. Added, 20 pounds?
Yeah.
His monster bench numbers. What was he, like 38? Something stupid like that.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I was watching him work out. He moved really well.
He was moving, man.
At the pro day. Now, he's just not real big, and looks like he at pretty short arms, but he's 310 plus pounds, right? I will not be shocked if he's a guy that somebody signs and looks at and maybe he has a shot to go make somebody's practice squad this year. I mean, he really helped himself. I'm not betting on it, but he really helped himself. As far as being a viable guy that maybe someone will want to sign and give a shot at next year with what he did at his year at Notre Dame.
Chris Smith's numbers were shocking at the pro day, man. I remember watching it. I was like, geez, man, what the heck? I expected I expect a lot of reps on the bench, right? Like, he's not the longest arm guy. He's a
short arm,
50-year guy. Exactly. Like, cool. But man, he moved.
38. But 38, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gets a long look. I think he went from a kid that maybe is a UDFA, a guy that like you can't bring in as a mini camp invite at some point, to maybe a priority free agent. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a call right as the draft's ending or right after the draft to come on in, man. Let's see what you got. Like, we like these numbers. We know that you were a rotational player this year. After moving up, you were only there for 1 year. Maybe you would have, had more if you were there a couple of years type of conversation. So Chris Smith gets an opportunity to at least showcase himself in the camp for sure. Bo Bauer is going to be a really interesting one because, to your point, Brian, I mean, I would love to have Bo Bauer running down on kickoff. If I was an NFL team, I would love it. But, the injury clouds that a little bit. Like, when is the recovery for? When is he going to get back? Because you're obviously not going to keep a kid on a roster that you haven't seen in person yet play, right? So it's just going to be the timeline. Things going to be a little bit funky. But again, he's a guy that you don't bet against that type of kid, right? You don't bet against that type of kid because he's just such a resilient player. And he was obviously really liked at Notre Dame. I mean, there was a reason that he was a captain. Right. Yeah. So I wouldn't bet against it.
2-year
really
captain,
wouldn't.
By the way.
Yeah.
Never started a game, I don't believe, at linebacker ever in his Notre Dame career in 5 years. Captain. And he was a 2-time team captain. Do I need to say anything else on his resume other than that right there? Right?
Players loved him, man.
Yes.
Fans loved him too.
Coaches loved him. I mean, that's the thing is his teammates loved him and the coaches loved him. And he's one of those guys who just, hey, whatever you need done. Hey, Bo, I need you to do this. I got you. Okay. I can do that. And if I can't do that, I'll teach myself how to do it, or I'll learn how to, or to give you my best. And you always root for kids like that. You really do.
And now he's trying to make the Luke Rhodes transition too, man. Luke Rhodes was a really good linebacker at William and Mary, but wasn't going to stick on an NFL roster. But you know what he did? He left the game for a year or two, and he went and he learned how to long snap, and now he's one of the best long snappers in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. So
I'm telling you, Bo Bauer will do that. If I've learned anything about this kid over the years, Ryan, it's that he will do that. There's no doubt in my mind. Anyone else, Ryan?
Certainly be able to cover a punt after he snaps as well. So
yes. Yeah. Anyone else that we that I might have missed? I mean, obviously Braden Lindsey's not pursuing an NFL career. Josh Lugg is probably a guy you hope that gets signed by some. He'll probably get a camp invite. Just he played for Harry Easton. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I can't think of anybody else that I don't have anybody else written down that.
Blake Groupie, man.
I'll tell you what, man, that kid's got a really strong leg. If he could just be more accurate, I mean, he's got a really powerful leg. I mean, it just sounds different coming off his foot.
I'll tell you, man, we saw him in practice in the fall last year. We heard it off his foot once. I'm like, yeah, that's different than Harrison Leonard was on the roster still at that point, right? It's like, yeah, it sounds a little different, man. It's a little different.
It's just one of those deals where it's like, man, that guy could have nailed that. Like, his 48-yard field goals are like hitting near the top of the uprights, but it's like 8 feet right. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, if this guy could zero it in a little bit, like he's got a powerful leg, man. Really powerful leg.
Yeah, he does. But yeah, I mean, I think Josh Lugg will get a camp invite. Like, I think he's a UDFA, not quite a priority free agent, but he'll get a camp invite just because he's a pretty big kid who has started at guard and tackle at the University of Notre Dame for multiple years. So at the end of the day, he'll get a look, but I just don't think he's the athlete to be able to stick on an NFL roster. But I hope I'm wrong.
Yes, hope so too. Hope all these kids stick and make it. Let's move on, Ryan. We're going to do our mailbag next, but I just want to ask everybody to hit that like button, everybody. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. We're going to move on to the mailbag next and get to some of these questions. And want to thank everybody that has donated so far to help baby Brady and help Jake and Abby, his mom and dad, as they raise money. When this show started a couple hours ago, they were around $1,800 on their main GoFundMe page, and they had 13 donations. We are now up to 75 donations and over $4,500 raised. Plus, there's over $500. There's a different GoFundMe link that I saw that somebody sent me that I donated to. That's over 500. So they are over $5,000 now, which means they are it's 2/3 of the way, right, Ryan? 7,500. So yeah. $7,500.
That's three quarters of the way, right? Wait.
I'm thinking
2/3.
25, right. 50, 75. I hired you for recruiting, not math. It's all good.
I was actually a math teacher at one point too, so that's good.
I made a smart career change, so that's probably good. It's probably good. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing next. So I just want to thank everybody that has donated already. And if you have not and you're able to, would love to see you donate now. Do not do it via Super Chat. Do it directly through the link. I'm going to put the link in there again for people to go to. I will figure once YouTube gives me the final number of what the Super Chat money was, I will go back and donate that as well. And so I just already reposted it in there, so you get a chance to see that. I want to thank all of you so much. This is such a great crowd. This is such a great community. To step up to the plate and help this family out. I knew you guys would. There was no doubt in my mind that you would. You are truly amazing people, and I'm very thankful that you are part of the community that we have here, and I truly mean that. In 2 hours, we were able to and I mean, some of that money is going to be raised from, just other people that are, but to what was that, about $2,700 in 2 hours. You all absolutely, and you got no heads up that we were going to do this. Just we didn't warn y'all. We didn't, like the Thanksgiving thing. We spent like 2 weeks, letting people know that was coming, and you guys are amazing. So really appreciate all of you very, very, very much. So Ryan, let's dive into the mailbag, man. We got some super chats here that I just want to thank people for. This is a super chat for Preston Wade, help a brother out. That was obviously in reference to the fundraiser that we're doing. We appreciate that. Also had one from Kay Grant down here. Kay Grant with a big one. Thank you. Dropping in after I saw Brian's tweet. #BradyStrong. Appreciate you, Kay Grant. And like I said, I will I will see how much is there, and then I will donate what you guys have. And Irish Mills, $540 for baby Brady, first and foremost. Secondly, with commits Isiah and Cam, aside from Micah, who is the next wide receiver domino you two seeing coming to South Bend? So I'm gonna alter this question a little bit, Ryan, because I want you to answer first. Obviously, I mean the answer is kind of easy for 24, but also talk about 25 and the potential for that, because I think that's part of this domino as well. But obviously, Micah Gilbert's the next one, but he wants to know who you think the next wide receiver domino could be for Notre Dame as far as coming to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2024, if Notre Dame is able to make 4 wide receivers work, which we hope that they can. Jason Robinson Jr., 2024 wide receiver out of Long Beach Poly in California, is the guy that they really honed in on. He's a guy that I think brings a dynamic ability as a route runner, the ability to play through contacts. I think he's a very alignment versatile football player. So he's the guy. On the 2025 board, I mean, there's a lot of interesting players right now. I mean, you talk about Talon Taylor is one for 2025 out of Illinois that I know Brian is extremely high on. He reminds me of a Ohio State receiver. Like he's one of those guys that would just go to Ohio State and be dynamic, like a Garrett Wilson-esque type of football player. He's really good. Taz Williams was just on campus this past weekend, the Texas kid. Dalen McCutcheon has been on campus before. He's also a really talented player out of the state of California. And then one guy that I really like, Brian, that has been on campus multiple times already, and grandfather actually went to Notre Dame, although he didn't play at Notre Dame, is Cooper Perry out of Arizona, who is a really interesting player. He was here a few weeks ago for his second visit, I believe, to campus. He's already talking about taking multiple visits, hopefully this summer and fall going in there. So Cooper Perry, Talon Taylor, Dalen McCutcheon, Taz Williams, a lot of talented receivers in 2025.
You're missing a guy.
Am I missing a guy?
Yeah.
2025.
Wide receiver, familiar name. Might know him.
Oh, Jerome Bettis Jr.
Sorry. There you go.
Yeah. Been on the podcast before too.
Yeah.
Out of Woodward Academy in the state of Georgia, 6'2", 175 pounds. Jerome Bettis Jr. How could I forget about Jerome Bettis Jr.?
Yes, absolutely. No,
that's like forgetting about James Flanagan or Bryce Young or one of these other legacies, man.
You're like, no, man. I just assumed that everyone already knew that we were talking about him as well. No, if there was any way that they could figure out a way to get Talon Taylor in the class soon, and he has not talked about committing soon, but if you could somehow by the end of the summer convince him to jump on board, I mean, you're talking about. I mean, he's my highest ranked receiver on the board right now, regardless of class. For me, he is. And the thing too, Ryan, it's what you've mentioned a couple times. He brings a completely different skill set than the guys they have in the class right now.
Yep,
a completely different skill set. But yeah, he's big time. He's big time. Tim Forward Super Chat. Thank you so much, Tim. Tim's a guy I've known for a long time. Great guy. As a dad of 2 young kids, when someone needs help, dads show up. Godspeed to Brady. Appreciate you, Tim. Very, very, very much, buddy. Let's get to some more questions, Ryan. I think that we got one more super chat down here from La Imrock. I appreciate you, buddy, very much. As a 50-year-old lifelong Notre Dame fan who has a daughter on a full academic ride at Bama's Honors College, go Fighting Irish and go Brady. I'll have a half-hearted Roll Tide for my daughter. I can't be there with you, man. Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. I just can't do it. I can't do it. But thank you for that. Really appreciate that super chat very much. So let's get back up here, Ryan. We got some football questions up here. Let's start with Brandon Plensner.
Brandon asks, if Tyler Buchner doesn't earn the starting job convincingly at Alabama this year, but still starts, who does it negatively impact the most? Tyler Buchner, Tommy Rees, or the Alabama football team?
Well, if he doesn't earn the starting job convincingly, I don't really care if he does it convincingly or not. I mean, I feel like, yes, it would be ideal, but at the end of the day, if he goes out there in the fall and plays like he's capable of, it won't negatively impact anybody. He'll be a good football player. The problem with this dynamic, and I think this gets to Brandon's question a little bit, Ryan, is it's like he almost has to start off hot.
Yeah.
Like he's going to have to come out of the gate playing really well, because if he is not convincingly the guy to Brandon's point, then if he doesn't come out red hot and, obviously Middle Tennessee game 1, but you got Texas in game 2. If he doesn't come out and they don't offense doesn't click, which is a little unfair because it's a good football team, then there's going to be he shouldn't have this, he shouldn't have that. I mean, it's a hard fan base to please, man. Think about the quarterbacks they've had playing think about that, Ryan. Think about the guys who've just recently. Who's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now?
Who's the highest ranked quarterback?
Highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, highest paid quarterback. It's Jalen Hurts now.
Okay. Who lost his starting job at Alabama after taking them to back-to-back national title games. Yep. Think about that, right? That's high expectations for an Alabama quarterback. He was replaced by Tua Tagovailoa, top 10 NFL draft pick. And then he was replaced by Mac Jones, replaced after he left, not replaced like in the starting lineup like he got benched. He was replaced then when he left the NFL for Mac Jones, who's a top 20 NFL draft pick. And then he got replaced by the dude that's about to be the number 1 overall pick. I just don't understand why this move is being made. And for anyone that says it's about he doesn't want to compete, all of that just says that's a ridiculous comment to make. Yep. Ridiculous comment to make. But it also it's partly why I don't think this was a smart decision by Tyler. Because if he doesn't come out hot early, Ryan, which is asking a lot of a kid that's transitioning to a new team and didn't have all spring like Sam Hartman had to work out those kinks, he's putting himself. Unfortunately, I feel like he's setting himself up to fail. Yeah, that's my concern.
I think the more interesting part of this question, though, Brian, for me is who is the most affected from a perception perspective. That's a little bit different, in my opinion, right? Because I would say Alabama fans will look at it and say, wow, that was a stupid move by Tommy Rees if Tyler Buchner is not the quarterback, right? If he's not, they'll be like, wow, that is really dumb. But then it could also affect the Bama football team because, one, if Tyler if Tyler doesn't do well and he wasn't the best quarterback for the job, not only are you affecting them, their ability to potentially contend for an SEC championship and maybe a national championship, you're also going to alienate that locker room a ton if that is the case that happens. But I think that there's going to be a lot of eyes on Tommy Rees if that doesn't work out, man. There is a lot of Alabama fans because Alabama fans aren't forgiving. They're used to winning. So if that is a bad move, they're going to be like, dude, like what? Why? Like you brought in a guy because the perception is going to say you brought in a guy that threw 2 more interceptions than touchdowns last year, brother, and lost to Marshall. Like that's going to be the perception from fans, although it's not all the way fair. Exactly.
If he does play well, the flip side, if
it looks like a genius.
If Tyler Buchner comes in, because we're talking about, well, what if he doesn't play well? But what if he does? Yeah. What if Tyler comes in and is the guy we think he can be? Because Ryan and I are both Tyler Buchner, like we both believe in Tyler Buchner's talent. He just has to put it all together. Let's say he does put it all together. Well, now all of a sudden, Tommy Rees just endeared himself big time to make like, wow, great job, man. Bringing this guy in. That was a ballsy move, right? Great job. And so I think that's obviously what Tommy's banking on. I mean, I think, look, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Coach Rees and Coach Saban know exactly what the consequences are of this move.
Yes,
they do. And Tommy Rees is not making this decision if Coach Saban is not on board with it. And they have had conversations with it. I mean, he understands it. I think there's a faith in Tyler's ability. I think there is a lot more faith in it. Actually, I'm going to be honest, it frustrates me talking with some Notre Dame fans about this. The disrespect, I mean, just the flat out disrespect that some people have for Tyler Buchner blows my mind. I don't know, like, did he hurt your feelings because he didn't pan out as quickly as you thought he should have, or he shouldn't have got hurt? Kid's never done anything wrong, never been a bad attitude, never been a problem. He battled his butt off. He got hurt. He helped the team as a freshman, go 11-1. And just the disdain some people have for him, I just do not understand. Why? Because he didn't play well in a couple games. It's disappointing. But it's a small minority, but it's a very loud minority. And then now you hear some people, oh, he doesn't want to compete. Like, do you hear yourself? He just left Notre Dame to go to Alabama. Do you know what's come before him? Do you know what's still there? And you're going to tell him he doesn't want to compete? Now, you can say, I don't think he's here's the stuff that I'm okay with. He's not accurate enough. That's fair. That's fair. Not sure if he's a great decision maker. That's fair. A guy that has more career interceptions and touchdowns, that's a fair criticism. I think there's things about Tyler's game that is fair to critique right now.
Yes.
But some of it's just so over the top that it makes it hard.
Becomes personal.
There's a reason, guys, that Nick Saban, the greatest coach of our generation, signed off on this move. There's also a reason he hired Tommy Rees. Now, will it work out? I don't know, because he also hired Kevin Steele. So maybe the guy is not what he used to be. His most recent hires, I've not been a huge fan of. But the reality is, if Tyler Buchner plays to his potential this year, Alabama's going to be really good on offense. Really good. Because he's going to have a really good offensive line, and he's going to have a pretty darn good running game around him, and he's going to have some good weapons. I don't think they're great weapons, but they're good weapons. They're at the very least going to have good weapons. And then he adds a dynamic running ability that Alabama really hasn't had as a runner. I mean, they've had athletic quarterback. Bryce Young is an athletic quarterback.
He's not a runner.
Not a runner. Tua was an athletic quarterback. He wasn't a runner. They haven't had a guy like this since Jalen Hurts in 2016 and 17 as a runner, to be honest with you. And I think that's going to help them with their run game. Now, here's the key. Can Tyler start hitting the layups, and can he cut down on the turnovers? That's going to be the key. That's going to be the big key for Tyler.
Yep.
Because he's the most dynamic playmaker that they have who also can throw the football, because that's my thing on Jalen Milroe. So he's going to have to make a very early impact. There's a lot of pressure on Tyler. He's going to have to win over that locker room, and he's not really the kind of kid that walks into the locker room the way that Sam Hartman did, and it's like, hey, I'm with y'all. I'm one of the guys. That's something he's going to have to work on too. And I hope it works out well, though, for him. I do. Because it's actually good for Notre Dame. If Tyler goes to Alabama and performs well, that helps Notre Dame's perception. Like, this kid couldn't even start at Notre Dame, and he's the savior in Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, maybe Notre Dame's a little different than we thought that they were. You know what I mean? So, like, I'll be rooting for them to beat LSU. You guys just got beat by Notre Dame's backup quarterback. I will have some fun saying that. I hope that happens. Pray that happens. So, we'll see. But that's a good question, Brandon. That's a good question.
Tyler Buchner beating Brian Kelly would be pretty awesome.
That would be amazing.
Question from Brandon Plensner says, B. Ryan, do you know if Isiah Canion will still be a Mr. Everything for this team his senior year, or will he be able to play strictly wide receiver on the offensive side of the ball? I've actually talked to him about this before, Brandon. I think there is more of an emphasis to play mostly wide receiver this year, more than it was last year. But I think that it's one of those situations where if they need him, he'll be ready to go type of conversation, right? So I still expect him to play defense. I wouldn't be shocked if he still plays a little bit of quarterback, and he's definitely going to be the team's punter. So he's still going to be asked to do a lot of things, but I think there is going to be a little bit more of an emphasis on let's develop you at the position that you're going to play in college and start to really develop those wide receiver skills.
Here's one here. Let's get one more from Brandon on this subject.
He says, how would you compare Isiah Canion to someone like Chase Claypool? Are they similar in your opinion? Is a player like Canion who runs a 4.51 able to get to a 4.4 by the end of their NCAA career, do you think?
Yes. I'd be willing to bet you that Chase Claypool was not a 4.4 when he came to Notre Dame.
Nah, I think he was like a 4.5 high or something like that.
Yeah,
So like
not a real 4.4. Again, there's the hand timed, 4.4s, and then there's a laser time. That's why we keep emphasizing laser time. If the strength program at Notre Dame does for him what it's done for other players, then he will, like 4.51 projects to, if there's typical growth, to at least to be a mid 4.4 guy when it's all said and done, at least, in my opinion. Do you agree with that, Ryan? I mean, that's the kind of growth that you make faster in 3 to 4 years. Yeah.
Yep.
So, very, very fair question. The speed perhaps compares to Chase. They're different athletes, though.
Yeah.
Chase was explosive. He was never like the most fluid guy. He was explosive. He was big. He was strong. Isiah is more smooth and skinnier. Just a different type of athlete. But both guys that can take the top off the defense, win one-on-one throws. Chase was just a different type of bot. I mean, Chase is one of the freakiest athletes in wide receiver. I mean, him, and you got like DK Metcalf, these crazy size, speed, leaping ability guys. The big thing for Chase, it's simple. He does not really actually want to be a great player. In his head, he might say he wants to, but it's more important for him to do other things besides being that dog, that man, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be great. I don't see that from him. I don't see a guy that cares about his craft the way that you need to in the NFL, in my opinion. Otherwise, he'd be more productive because he has freaky athletic skills.
If anybody's never seen it, you should go back and look at Chase Claypool's huddle highlight tape coming out of high school when he was coming out of Canada. It was dumb. It was stupid, man. He was playing like outside linebacker too. Like it was just insane. And he was a really good. Was he like a 40-point per game basketball player or something like that coming out too? He was like a silly basketball player.
Insane athlete. Yeah, he was about 40 points a game if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Obviously, the competition isn't great up in Canada, but still,
right.
I mean,
but it was silly.
Yeah.
It was silly, man. Absolutely silly. USMA with a question, Ryan. Here we go. Let's move on.
Over under 3 commitments this week for Notre Dame. How are we? Can I ask one question before I answer this? How are we saying a week? Or am I saying from Thursday to Thursday of next week? Is that a week?
Yeah. Let's say from this yesterday until next Wednesday or next Thursday.
I'll say it's a push. It's a push. If you're asking me the over-under of 3, I will say it's a push and that there is 3 in that time span.
Yep. Agree. Brandon Plesner has an NFL draft question for you. I'll ask this one for you, Ryan. Brandon asks, Brian, have you ever been on site live for an NFL draft before? I feel like when they've had it in New York, you could have made it.
So they actually had it in Philadelphia a couple years ago as well, but I have never been live in an NFL at the NFL draft. Actually, I haven't ever really wanted to go. For me, it's more about I like the evaluation side of it, right? So it's more like I want to be at the combine. I want to be at one of the all-star games. Like that's more my bag, right, Brandon? I actually enjoy just kind of sitting back and just watching, right? Because it's like that's the chaos ensues. Like I'm not as much like I need to be in person to see this chaos. I just want to see it. So I had the chance to go to the one in Philly, but I didn't end up going. You're right that there was at least once that it was in New York. So I could have made it, but I've never been to the draft though. No, I like Indianapolis though for the combine. That's really nice.
If I could do something for the draft, I would want to be in a room with the team. I would want to be
awesome.
in like the war room.
Yeah.
That would be like that would be so much fun, especially a team that like has a bunch of picks and because the teams with a bunch of picks usually move those, like they do a lot of movement. They don't just sit home and make their 14 picks. They use that to move all over the draft, man. That would be so much fun.
Now, would you just want to be a fly on the wall, or would you want to actually?
I just would want to sit back and watch.
Yeah.
Like, and just like to see all the conversations, because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. If there's a Notre Dame kid and they want to ask my opinion, sure, I'll give it. But I just mean more like I would just love to sit in a war room.
That would be cool. Yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun. I think for me, man, like I think some people have like this weird conception or like perception of the draft sometimes where they're like, it's like what you see on draft day, right? And it's like, that's not at all what a war room is. Like I have a lot of friends that are either current or former NFL scouts that have told me what a war room's been like. And it is like, it's like intense, man. Like it's not like one of those things where people are just like sitting back and just like people are going to bat for guys, right? You hear about pounding on the table all the time. War rooms get really intense. So that would be a lot of fun. I agree.
Yeah, I would love to do that. You mean it's not one of those? Yes, but I'm sorry. I know it's not realistic, but it was still a fun movie.
Oh, I watch it every year because it gets me in the mood. But yeah, it's not very realistic though. No.
It's all good though. But if it was realistic, it wouldn't be a very entertaining movie. Yeah. Like Moneyball, like all those deals they made, they were not all made that season. It was like over a course of a few years. But if you did it then, it'd be a really boring movie.
It wasn't over the course of 20 seconds.
No, it was not. It was not.
That's awesome, man.
I love this comment from Tom T. Guns, Crocs and Glocks. Can we officially start calling Alabama ND light now? How about let's wait until we actually Notre Dame wins the championship or beats Alabama first before we start cracking those jokes too much. All right. Here we go, Joe Medina with one. Hey, Ryan.
And Joe Medina says Deion Sanders is refusing to allow players who have transferred out of Colorado to have the players' practice film from last season. hurting the player's chances to be recruited? Is this a regular occurrence? Talked about this a lot yesterday.
Yeah, they have since backtracked on that and say that all film before the spring is available to players. So that is available now. And it's a somewhat common occurrence. No team has just this blanket policy that will give you all the practice film that you need.
Yeah.
They'll some will make cut ups for them and different things like that, but nobody just blanket does it. It's just, but the fact of just the utter complete lack of access was the problem with Colorado, but that has since been rectified. And you saw some spin about, well, some kids have it, and just like, but it was a bad look. It was a bad look.
College old 22 is like sacred for some reason too, man. Like no one wants anyone to have it. It's like, all right, man.
It's pretty wild. Coaches are a paranoid bunch. There's no doubt about it.
They sure are.
No doubt.
Question from Irishman 7114. Is he locked in at wide receiver, or could we sign another wide receiver and move him to safety? Obviously talking about Isiah Canion.
Yeah, right now it's receiver. I mean, look, could it happen down the road? Sure. There was no intention of moving Xavier Watts when he came to Notre Dame, and he ended up starting at safety.
Yep.
Right now, that is not something that Notre Dame is talking about. They're looking to fill their class. They're looking to get, Kennedy Urlacher, Davis Andrews, DeJuan Lane, those kind of guys. They're looking to fill their safety class with those type of players and go to the portal. They're not talking about moving Isiah Canion. They're not recruiting Isaiah the way that they did Brandon Hillman, which was, we're just going to get him and figure out where he's going to play based on how the rest of the class goes, which would be fine if they wanted to, but they would have had to tell him that. Yes. They're recruiting him as a wide receiver. Like, that's how this staff views him. This is a wide receiver.
Chancey Stuckey loves this kid, man. Loves this kid. Yep. And I'll say this, if there was the idea on the table, I know Chancey Stuckey would be fighting them off, be like, nah, you can't have my guy, man.
Jared, so would Gino. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right.
Next question from John Mayernich. If we end up signing Cam Williams, Isiah Canion, Micah Gilbert, and Jason Robinson Jr., which is the better wide receiver class, 2023 or 2024?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ryan. And honestly, John, it's a better question to ask next November, December.
Year or
because right now we're comparing these kids' senior seasons to these other kids' junior seasons. And so it's a little bit hard to do that. It's close. I'd give the slight edge to last year's group just because the proven production in last year's group is nuts.
It really is nuts.
Like,
we don't talk about that enough. Of like when you put all their career numbers together, it's like, dang, man. Like, right. I mean, just the top two. I mean, just put Rico and Jaden's together. You're just like, holy smokes.
I was talking with somebody yesterday, Ryan, and we were talking about that, and I was like, Rico Flores is a kid who you look at him and it's like, okay, this kid had like almost 3,000 career yards.
Yep.
He had like 30 career touchdowns and just had really great. And it's like, he doesn't come close to what Jaden Greathouse produced in his career.
No.
I mean, and even Caleb Smith, his production as a receiver and return man was really outstanding.
Yep.
He had over 1,500 career receiving yards. Braylon James was the least productive of all of them because of the offenses he played in. But then he went out and had almost 1,000 yards, I think, as a senior because he averaged like 13
yards a catch.
It was insane. And you say if he could, imagine what Braylon James could have done in a year with Cade Klubnik. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been fun to watch.
Well, imagine what Jaden Greathouse's final career numbers would have been, Brian, if he would have had Klubnik for one more year as a senior. Because, man, his production took a step back as a senior just because the quarterback position wasn't quite as good at Westlake, but still was able to score, 53 career receiving touchdowns and like 57 total or something like that.
Because he had like 4 punt returns as a senior, which is just nuts. It's like, this guy's insane. So I'd have to I will say this. I think that foursome, I would argue that the ceilings are higher with this foursome than in the 23 class. But the floors right now in the 23 class are way higher.
We saw that this spring. This spring. Yeah.
I'll say this also. It's a great compliment.
It's a great compliment.
Right? To each other. But it's a good problem. It's a good debate to have, and I'm glad that we get to have it.
Yeah,
Or at least I
100%.
hope we get to have it anyway.
Yeah. Raymond Harton says, what does it mean for a receiver to stack?
It basically means to get on top of a guy, and I'm going to try my best to show this. So basically, try to use these pens as an example, right? So looking at it this way, so here's the defensive back, here's the receiver, and the defensive back's playing outside. So the receiver's going to come off the line, and he's going to try to get even with him and then get past him, right? But once he's passed, you don't want to keep this distance because then the corner can kind of close and he has room to make a play on the ball and get into your hip. What you want to do is you want to come and get past and then stack him to where you get him on your back hip, right? Get him on it's on your back cheek, basically. And what that does is that shields him from getting to your front. So if he's kind of hip to hip, he can get his hands to my front. He doesn't have to go through me to get his hands to my front, right? If I stack him and I put him on my back cheek, now he has to go through me to try to get to the football. So if the quarterback can throw the ball here or here, there's not a lot he can do except break my arm, right? Yeah. And what that also does is that then also makes my next move a little bit more impactful. Because now, once he gets on my cheek, he sort of the corners are kind of in, okay, I'm now in recovery mode. And so now that allows me to stick a post, stick a corner, and then he's going to a lot of times overreact to it because I got him in a level where he's thinking recovery. Whereas if he's kind of hip to hip with me, or I've got some distance, he doesn't have to bite on my move because he has a gap that he can kind of close on me. Right. So stacking basically puts that defender in a it's kind of like if you like basketball, if I've got a guy properly posted up, he's on my butt. Now I can take the post pass and I can then do what I got to do. But if a guy is fronting me, right, or he's hip to hip, then I got to put that ball low and away because he has room to get his hands out in front and kind of clog up part of that throwing lane. Similar thing here. Stacking is I got that guy straight posted up. He's on my cheek, and he can't get through me. So if the ball's thrown properly, there's not a lot he can do. And like I said, it also gives you more freedom to stick certain routes and beat him with certain routes as well. So that's what stacking means. Good question, Ray. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Ryan?
No, I would just say when you stack someone, you kind of get the defensive back even with you as well. So to your point of being able to run a more impactful route, the break off of that, basically a two-way go at that point, right? If I have somebody that has inside leverage on me, it's still going to be very hard for me to run an inside breaking route, right? But if a guy's right in the back of me, I have kind of a two-way go to run an outside breaking route, inside breaking route, and that also helps me as far as being more impactful as a route runner.
Yep, good stuff.
Next question.
Let me read this one, Ryan, because this is for you.
Gotcha.
So Vanilla Chill says, Ryan, there's been a lot of buzz in the last 24 hours of Jalen Carter to the Bears at 9. Todd McShay and Greenberg, I don't know who that Greenberg is, who's at the draft, have both said that Carter will fall to them. Could you see that happening? There's actually, can I bring up a second question?
Of course.
With it that kind of is along the same lines?
Sure.
There's also a question here from CV, this guy. I'm not quite sure how to say that. And he says, Ryan is a diehard Bears fan. Is the Jalen Carter slander of maturity and being uncoachable a smokescreen to get him to fall, or is there legit concerns by teams? And I think this is appropriate to bring up, Ryan, because the reality is if there's not that offseason issue, I have a hard time believing Jalen Carter falls to 9. So back to the original question, and you can kind of build that second part of that answer into it. Could you see that? Could you see it happening that Jalen Carter falls to the Bears at number 9?
It could happen. Yeah, I think for me, I've talked about, yes.
Third part of it. Could you?
Yes.
What would it mean for the Bears if they were able to get Jalen Carter in round 1 and maybe get Isaiah Foskey in round 2? Because that's the thing we talk about in 2 or 3. Just wanted to throw that out there. I'm kidding.
Gotcha.
Anyway, go back to your answer. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So for me, Vanilla Chill, I've talked about this. I actually talked about this on CFB Nation. I just did a draft show last night that was live this morning about just kind of some headlines for the 2023 NFL draft. You should go take a look at that video because I actually talked about the Jalen Carter slide potentially. Basically, what I think is happening here is that Jalen Carter, without the off-field stuff, that the conversation was going to be a top 3 NFL draft pick. I think that there was a good conversation of Houston, Texas at 2, and maybe the Cardinals stick at number 3 if he is just squeaky clean off the field. Right now, I think that there is a possibility of a slide. I think the Seattle Seahawks at 5 are a team that makes some sense. I think the Detroit Lions at 6, Las Vegas Raiders at 7, Atlanta Falcons at 8, Chicago Bears at 9, and Philadelphia Eagles at 10 are all teams that could use Jalen Carter. So ultimately, I think he's not going to fall out of the top 10. To your question, is there a reality where he's a Bear? It's possible. It's possible. I mean, it really depends on when the quarterback domino starts, when the offensive line board starts being taken in the draft. So it's a possible, yes. I actually think that he won't get there personally, but it is possible that it happens. The maturity side of the conversation, whether it's a smokescreen or not, it's not a smokescreen. It's not, because there was an incident that happened where he fled the police. Like that's a real life thing, right? This isn't like you hear the slander stuff all the time.
And it
like,
wasn't his only vehicular related
yes,
misdeed.
Exactly. And so like, this isn't a situation where it's like, oh man, we hear there's some character concerns, but you're like, can you give me more than that? Or is that
like Warren
all...
Sapp? He smokes too much weed. That was an attempt to get him to slide so somebody can get him. That's what I felt about that one.
Yes. Yeah.
So
there's always that type of stuff that happens. It's like the CJ Stroud stuff that came out, right? There's maturity issues for CJ Stroud. It's like, well, tell me what they are. What are they, right? So there is some stuff to this. There is.
He had 100%. A 18% cognitive. When people are throwing that out there, that's somebody trying to get him to fall. That's to them. That's what that is. Yes.
100%. Yeah. So yes, there is some smoke there. There's no doubt. If to Brian's last question of if the Chicago Bears got a Jalen Carter and followed it up with Isiah Foskey, but more than anything, the ability to trade back, get DJ Moore, the draft capital, and get Jalen Carter at 9, if you're comfortable with him off the field, just got the best player in the draft, potentially at pick number 9, and you were able to trade back 8 spots to do it, right? Like, that's incredibly impactful for the Chicago Bears. Like, bravo if that happens. Because, look, this is the point blank, in my opinion. If Jalen Carter is good and he is focused and he's clean and you're comfortable with him off the field, kid's going to be a star. Like, he's absolutely going to be a star. You just said Warren Sapp, Brian. I think there's some Warren Sapp in that game. I really do. I think he could be that type of impact player. It's just about how comfortable are you with him. And I think that answer is going to be different for every team, in my opinion.
That's a good one. I have a draft question I'm going to ask you at the end of this, Ryan. Andre Tonsel asks Ryan, he says, what does the commitment mean in numbers as a team overall? It doesn't change anything. This is just adding a number. You haven't quite got to your max number yet, Andre. When you start to have a commitment impact your overall numbers is when you get to your max. Like, okay, this gives us our max. Does this mean we have to drop dudes left on the board because we can't go past this number?
Right.
Or does it mean we now have to we want to take another kid here, which means we got to take something from somewhere else? Right? Like, that's what I keep telling people. You can't just say add a guy until you're ready to tell me what position you're taking away from, because you have to take away from somewhere. Well, you just have a kid off the current team leave. What position? Right? Because is there a receiver you want to kick off the team right now? I sure don't. You know what I mean? As far as when you talk about the scholarship numbers are going to impact this recruiting class, it's why I said yesterday, it's not as easy as people think that it is. It really isn't. But to your question, Andre, because that's not what Andre's asking. Sure. It doesn't really impact the numbers overall. It just gets them one guy closer to reaching their minimum need in this class. And it also, it's more about, like, it gives them a specific skill set and all that. But numbers wise, this is just gets them closer to reaching their goals in this class.
Okay. Next question from Leighton Borkholder. Excuse me. Where do you guys think Kenny Mitchell's development will be by the end of fall camp in 2024? Wow, that's going way far out.
Where do I think it will be? I have no idea. Where do I hope it is? I hope that he's competing for the starting job. I do.
Yes.
I hope that he's developed to the point where, and what does that look like, right? Obviously, he's got to get healthy, and he's still working his way back to being 100% healthy. He's got to get stronger. He's got a bit of I'm trying to think of a way to say this that doesn't come off as mean, because I don't mean it to be, but he's got a little bit of pudge. Right, as a core. I mean, there's not a lot of definition there. I want to see him really attack the weight room. I think the biggest concern I have about Kenny, that from what I've seen so far, it's just I think he kind of just stepped into this thing and just kind of knew he wasn't going to play, so there just was no urgency. We're going to find out if that was just because of the circumstance or if that's just who he is. We're going to find that over these next couple months. But my hope is that by the end of the 23 season and then head into the 2024 season, that we're talking about a kid that's like, yeah, this kid's got a chance to be the starting quarterback. And
Yep.
because here's the thing for me, Leighton, it's not CJ Carr or Steve Angeli that will determine if Notre Dame's going to go into the portal next year to try to find a starting quarterback. I think it's going to be Kenny Minchie.
Sure.
If Kenny Minchie's not ready to be a starter next year, then I think you almost have to go to the portal at that point in time. If Kenny grows to where you feel good about where you are, like this kid could be that dude for us, and let him and Steve and CJ battle it out, then you don't need to go to the portal for a starter. You can maybe go to the portal for a veteran depth guy, but I even wouldn't do that then, because if Kenny wins a job, I want CJ to be my backup, and then we're going to do this battle again next year. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping he is. Where will he be? I don't know where he's going to be next Tuesday. So, but that's what I'm hoping that he is. And I think that, Leighton, that's the ideal. Like, that's the ideal scenario, that because of Kenny's development, you feel like you're fine. Between CJ's God-given ability, Steve's dependableness, and what Kenny's doing, your hope as a staff that we're going to go to the portal? Nah, we're good. We're really good. We're comfortable with where we are. This is and this next question from Katie Ryan is in reference to the Buckner stuff.
Katie's question is, aren't they setting him up for an awkward locker room dynamic with his connection to Tommy Rees? If he wins the job, it will have to be obvious, or people will assume he was handed it. You're not wrong.
No, she's not. I mean, he doesn't have to be the obvious winner to be the starter. Yeah. But the question isn't that. The question is, what is the perception going to be?
Yes.
And that's the reality of it. And yes, it does. It creates that. And this is what, and not only that, not doesn't have to be the obvious starter in practice, but he has to come out and play well in the first few games. Yep. I mean, there can be no learning curve for him. He's going to have to do it early, or there's going to be some problems. It's just another reason this move doesn't make a lot of sense to me for him. I get why Bama's doing it. I mean, you'd be stupid not to do it if you're Alabama. Give me one more talented quarterback in this room, because that ups your chance that you're going to have a pretty good starter. Because if Ty Simpson or Jalen Milroe or Dylan Lonergan, and it's probably Ty Simpson is the guy that has the best chance to beat him out, I would imagine.
Yeah.
If he beats out Tyler Buckner, then you got a chance to have pretty good quarterback, and Ty Simpson's better than I think he is.
Sure.
And if he doesn't beat him out, well, now you've got a guy like Tyler Buckner who, I mean, just put up 300 some yards and 5 touchdowns on an SEC team that has pretty good even without the the NFL kids that opted out. South Carolina had pretty good cornerbacks and secondary guys and defensive players in that game. And Tyler, he was working them, I mean, and if it wasn't for his own mistakes, that's a blowout over that team. Yeah. So the tools are there. He just has to put it all together. But to your point, Katie, is he going to get that chance? Will he ever be able to win over the locker room in the way that he needs to? That's a great question, and I do not have the answer to that. And that's one of my biggest concerns for Tyler in making this move.
It's going to be entertaining, if nothing else. So
yeah,
we shall see.
This is more of a comment from Mark Stewart. I was going to read this one. He says, Minchie's a talent. I hope he doesn't have to play this year outside of mop-up duty, but I feel comfortable with him and Carr the following year. I actually hope that he plays a lot of mop-up duty this year if he's the backup quarterback. But yes, to Mark's point, unless it's like kind of what happened to C.J. Stroud a couple years ago, where he got hurt. But if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I believe when he got hurt in 2021, it was a situation where he could have played if they needed him to.
Because he had just not played very well, so they were kind of like, just ease out here a little bit. Yeah.
Right. And then he comes back against Rutgers the next week and goes for 330 and 5 touchdowns, and he was fine, right? Like,
yes.
If there's a scenario where, like, let's say Sam's a little banged up and, from the NC State game, and you're going to say, hey, Sam, we're going to sit you and get you healthy for the Ohio State game next week. Okay, fine. Or, hey, Sam, as soon as we get up big on Central Michigan, you're coming out early, like real early, like second quarter early.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind something like that, preferably, especially the second part where Sam's not banged up early, but just like, hey, man, listen, just so you know, against Tennessee State and against Central Michigan, if we get up big early, we're pulling you out. Right. And then let him come out and just let him get 250 yards by halftime. You know what I mean? And then let that other kid play. I would like to see a lot of that this year, in my opinion. We have a super chat here from Jim Halloran. It says hashtag go Brady. Jim, appreciate you very, very, very much. I'm going to read this one, Ryan, because this one's also for you from Pete Weber. Ryan, what do you think will happen with Lamar Jackson? Any chance he's on the move tonight?
I have no idea, Pete. I have no idea. This is such a weird situation. I mean, you're just hearing that there's not a ton of suitors. I ultimately think that something's going to be I think he's going to get stuck in Baltimore this year. I think it's what it's going to end up happening. And then his hand's going to force because it's just going to be like, dude, like, this is just not going to work, right? Like, and I'm not going to play and it's not going to work. So I don't think it happens anytime soon. And I think Baltimore tries to hold on to him. But I mean, as in like, who's a suitor for him? I have no idea. I really don't. Like, there's no inkling. There's no intel out there. Like, no one knows anything about the situation. It's weird. It's
Baltimore still wants to keep him, right? Is that
they do? Yeah, but
so,
he demanded a trade. So
I get all that, but do you think that because I haven't heard a lot since Odell signed, and wasn't Odell a guy that Lamar wanted or something like that? I think I heard, or
probably,
you know. So it's going to be interesting. Very interesting.
I think he's gonna be stuck there for the time being, but we shall.
And I kind of feel like if he doesn't get traded tonight, he's not going to get traded unless he just sits out, just says I'm not playing. You know,
yeah, it's gonna be weird.
And I don't know if you want to go that route. I'm not a big fan of that route as a quarterback. And then we got Kevin Carter here. Kevin, I told y'all if you do give and you have a question to let us know, and Kevin did. Ryan, he said, I gave my super chat to Jake and Abby, and I hope I posted it right. It did. I saw it go through. Said the 23 class has a swagger confidence we haven't had much of in a while. Does the 24 class or potential class have the same? What say you, Mr. Roberts?
Does it have as much or the same? So in the situation, if Notre Dame's able to get Jason Robinson Jr., they will have a lot of swagger in the 2024 class as well. Yeah. Not as much in the 2023, I would say personally, because Rico and Jane are just like they're completely different animals from just like an attitude perspective, man. Like they got something to them where like, I'm gonna outwork you, brother. I'm gonna do that all day.
And I'm the man, and I'm going to show you that I'm the man.
Jaden Greathouse's first media availability before spring even started, he said, I am going to be the best receiver on this team. And it's just like, okay. Sounds good,
and it wasn't arrogant. It was just kind of like matter of fact. Like, yeah, I mean, of course I am. I'm Jaden Greathouse. But here's the thing I love about it, Ryan. Here's the thing I absolutely love about it. He didn't just say it and then he said it and then worked his butt off to get there.
Yes.
Right. And Rico has a similar confidence, but Rico is a little bit more personable.
Yes.
You know, where he's going to say it, but in a way that's not so brash. Which, as a receivers coach, I'm totally fine with Jaden Greathouse feeling that way and saying that as long as you back it up. I kind of like that from I like receivers that like this whole, I hate the to me, you want a guy that's a better teammate than T.O. at times, but you need that guy that just has this unhealthy confidence in himself as long as he's a worker. And the one thing I never heard about T.O. was whether or not he would work, right? I mean, he would work. And you want that because he wanted to go show you. He wanted to go back up. Like I talked the talk. Now I'm going to back it up. And because like that's what I love. You know, grew up a Larry Bird fan, and if you ever listen to stories about Larry Bird, that's one of the things I just find amazing. Like he was such a trash talker. The great ones but they just have this burning desire to show. Like Larry Bird in the finals comes out of a timeout and tells the Lakers exactly what he's going to do. Hey, we're going to run this play. I'm running off this pick here. I'm going to go in that corner. I'm going to pop a three in your face. And Byron Scott and James Worthy both tell the story. And that's exactly what happened. He did exactly. He would tell you what he's about to do, and then he would go do it, and there was not a dang thing you could do about it, right? And that's
I like the 3-point. I like the 3-point competition story where he just like, oh, who's coming in second today? Like,
they said he walks around, he just stands there and he's just kind of looking around, and they're like, what's he doing? He goes, I'm just trying to see who's going to come in second today, right? Because then he won 3 in a row at that time. Yeah. But apparently, according to JJ Redick, he's not a great 3-point shooter. Freaking.
Oh, did he say that?
He did.
Oh, I didn't hear.
But that's what you want, right? You want that guy that has that supreme confidence because he's going to get jammed and embarrassed or drop a ball. And you don't want that guy that's not going to bother him. I don't care. I'm going to come back out. I'm actually going to, you stopping me on this play was the worst thing you could have done because now I'm mad. Right. And now you're really in trouble. Right. And so I love it. I would say, to your point, I got to see the class fill out first, because Isiah Canion is a lot like Caleb Smith.
Yes.
Quiet, shy, not a big social media guy except to like praise teammates and things like that. Really, really smart kid. Cam Williams is a lot like Braylon James,
Yeah.
right?
He's got a little swagger to him, just not
Swagger,
as
but
much.
just
Yeah.
fun
Outward.
and just
Yeah.
like Cam's confident, Brand's confident, but they're just more like that likable kid that's the life of the party, and just that real fun personality. And Jaden's that real serious dog, right? Like that real serious, like like I was listening to the story Allen Iverson was telling about Kobe Bryant, how, when Allen came in town, they're going to play, Kobe picks him up at the airport, they go out, and then, he drops him, he's going to drop him off, and Allen's like, where are you going? I'm about to go to the club. And Kobe's response is, well, I'm going to the gym. And like, that's why Kobe has all those rings and Iverson doesn't, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons, right? But that's Jaden Greathouse to me.
Yeah.
He's that just guy like, oh, you're going where? All right, cool. Have fun. Where are you going? I'm about to go get on the jugs for the next hour and a half. I'm about to work on my route running all by myself for the next 2 hours, right? Like, that's Jaden Greathouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
They don't have that guy in this class yet.
No.
Jason Robinson, as you said, might be it. And I think Micah Gilbert has a little bit of that in him too. So it's not there yet. It's not there yet. Yeah. But Jason Robinson definitely has some. And he puts in the work because of just the way that he plays. You don't get that way by not working. You're not the route runner he is by not being a worker. It's not possible.
Yep.
It's not a trait like you just come out of the womb with great hand-eye coordination and you can hit a baseball.
Right.
It's something that requires really specific work to get to.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. I'll ask this one, Ryan, because I know you know the answer to this. This is from Chuck Melchior. Says, what's the latest with Emmett Mosley? He seemed like a slam dunk. Did the staff cool on him, or is he still an option?
He's not still an option. That one is, just kind of parted ways. I think that at the end of the day, Chuck, from this one, I think Emmett Mosley is one of those kids that may just want to create his own pathway. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are. He's a double legacy. We know that. We know that his father obviously played football at Notre Dame. We know his mom was a all-time great soccer player for Notre Dame as well. I think Emmett is just one of those kids that just wants to kind of be different than what his parents were. So, it's just wasn't a fit that he wanted, I guess is the best way to put it. He wants to go a different path. Oh, I liked him a lot. Yeah.
Notre Dame liked him. It wasn't on them. They didn't drop him, and they liked him.
Yep. Just wants a different path, man. And that's fine. That's him.
Yeah. I've heard his younger brother is more of a Notre Dame guy than Emmett
really?
was. Yeah. And I think he's in the 26 class. He's already been offered by Notre Dame, I think. Or no, maybe he camped at Notre Dame.
Gotcha.
In the 26 class. So we'll see. Hopefully they have a little bit more success there than they did with Emmett.
We're talking about 2026 kids already, man.
Yeah. Only because it's a legacy. That's the only reason why.
I know.
All right. Here we go.
Next question is from Tyler Smith. Let's say Devin Brown wins the Ohio State quarterback competition and Kyle McCord enters the portal. How hard do you think Notre Dame should attack him to come?
Not. They shouldn't. Because number one, he's not going to be in this portal window. It would have to be for next year. And if I'm adding a quarterback in 2024, it's a guy that's proven. It's another Sam Hartman. It's not another talented, unproven guy. If I want a talented, unproven guy, I'll play CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie. Right? If I want a proven guy, if I'm going to bring in another quarterback to compete with those young, talented kids, it's going to be a Sam Hartman. It's going to be a guy that's a proven commodity. It's someone who's been a starter, someone who's had success. It's going to be that. It can't be another talented guy that hasn't been able to put it together yet. And especially if Kyle McCord can't beat out a younger player, is he really the needle mover that you want to stunt the development of Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr? He isn't. Like if Drake May wanted to still stay in college for another year and come to Notre Dame, sure. Okay, I'll stunt the growth of those guys for a year of Drake May or Caleb Williams, right? But I don't think that those guys are that. And I'm a Kyle McCord guy, but he's not that. He's not that guy. The only chance I would have had for Kyle McCord to come to Notre Dame would have been this past year. And, let him battle with the other inexperienced guys. But now it's like, okay, it's either another Sam Hartman-ish type of guy or I'm rolling with my talented young guys.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Next question is from Bailey Brad. With Tyler Buckner going to Alabama, does this make the Gino Guidugli hire that much more important? having a dedicated quarterback coach seems very important to get Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie ready to play.
This is a
Yeah,
great observation, Bailey Brad. Great
I think it
observation.
is.
Like it is
Yeah, man.
spot on because the OC, once the season starts, has got a lot of responsibility with running the entire offense.
Yes.
And every position coach has a role in game planning. But Gino's number one, number two, and number three job is developing the quarterbacks. This is a great observation. Yes, it makes having a dedicated coach that much more important. So, great observation, Bailey Brad. You're spot on. Your instinct on this is absolutely spot on. It's
Yeah.
huge to have a guy that's just the quarterback's coach.
For the
When
every part of the day
Yep,
circumstances, right? Not even when you
yep,
get on the practice field, it's also how you watch film properly. What are you going to do before and after practice? What are you going to do in your downtime? Like it's because Gino is not only a quarterback coach, he's also a former college quarterback, which is big. I know Tommy was as well, but having just that quarterback coach that's there every single day to help tutor every facet of this thing, I think is big time. I
yeah.
really do.
And I'm not someone who normally thinks you have to have a quarterbacks only guy. I think you can. I mean, we've seen a lot of success. Matter of fact, we've seen a guy who's the head coach, the coordinator, and the quarterbacks coach basically in the past, and Lincoln Riley, and it works out,
Yeah.
right? I just think, and it's a case by case basis what's best. And in this particular case, where you could be rolling into next season with a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt freshman, and a true freshman who are talented but haven't played a whole lot, it's really good to have during that period of time a guy that's only developed, whose only responsibility or primary responsibility is developing those guys in every aspect and can dedicate the time to it. That's the thing, Ryan. An OC slash quarterbacks coach's primary job is develop his position, right?
Yep.
Until you get into the season. But with this instance, that's literally, he doesn't have those other duties. And that's very, very important.
Yep.
Very important.
Next question is from Rob Tidoff. Brian and Ryan, over the past 30 years, what Notre Dame player was drafted too high and what player was drafted too low? Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. All right. So Rob Thidoff always comes with the questions that make us have to think, and I love that.
Thought provoking.
Thidoff is
Yes.
thought provoking.
Thidoff
I'll tell you the one guy that pops in my head always as a guy that got overdrafted was Jerry Tillery. That's the first one that pops in my head. I thought Jerry Tillery is more of a third round pick. I think Jerry always had the physical tools to be a really good player. I just never felt like defensive line was his best position. I always felt his best position was still offensive tackle. And I will take that to my grave. He also was not as good as a senior as some of the perception was. He had that huge game against Stanford, and there was a lot of okay football the rest of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so he's the first one that kind of pops in my head, Ryan.
Deshaun Kaiser probably went too high as a second rounder, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight 2020, yes. My thing is what I'm trying to do, and that's a fair answer, Ryan. What I'm trying to do is give an answer of what I thought at the time that then turned out to be that way. I thought 52 for Kaiser was a steal because you're talking about a guy with top 20 talent. It just didn't have top 20 attitude. So it wasn't as risky drafting a guy in the 50s if he doesn't pan out as it would have been drafting a guy at 16 that doesn't pan out. But but I mean, hindsight, Ryan, yes, that was I mean,
I have one.
As bad as he was, he shouldn't even been drafted. Yeah.
Didn't Miles Boykin get drafted in the third rounds?
Yeah, he did.
He was not a third round player.
He was a combine. He was a combine pick. He was a guy that got drafted that high because he had a crazy combine.
Yes.
His film, he had one good year, not even a great year, one good year.
Yep.
And there was always questions about, does this guy really have that desire to be great? Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, talk about guys that were drafted too low. I mean, the first one that pops in my head is like Brock Wright. I mean, he wasn't even drafted, and he's a starting tight end in the NFL right now, right? Like, that's certainly one that pops in my head a little bit, Ryan.
Julian Love probably should have been a round or two earlier, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, he's developed into a really good safety. And I mean, he was good. I mean, yes, there was some scheme specificity to him coming out, but the kid was a good football player, man. Like, he was a really good player.
He was a heck of a college football player.
Yeah.
And the thing I liked him, I think the thing that hurt Julian was the speed. But if you really look at like the overall athleticism, those numbers were really good. His overall athletic numbers were really good. I'm going to try to pull up what his combine numbers, Ryan. But if I remember correctly, like his agility and three cone and all that other stuff was really good. Yeah. I have it right here. He ran a 6.72 in the
That's
three
great.
cone, which is yes, outstanding. He just ran a 4.54, which isn't even slow, but it's not great.
Right.
And his 20-yard shuttle was a 4.1, which is pretty good, not great, but he had a 36-inch vertical.
Yep.
I think the things that hurt Julian is the speed, and then also the fact that he just doesn't look like he works out. Like I'm not saying that to be mean, but like you look at his body and you're like, that dude doesn't lift weights.
Yeah.
He just some guys just don't have that. Like I know Sheldon Day lifts weights. I know Sheldon Day works hard in the weight room, but just look at him and you're like, this guy looks like, the uncle that hangs out on the couch. But some guys don't work out at all and they're chiseled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just the reality of sometimes it's just your DNA. And there's nothing that Sheldon Day is going to do besides taking HGH or steroids. It's going to make him look like Stephon Tuitt did. Just have different bodies. And Julian just has one of those bodies. He's not a really ripped up guy, even though he works. And, but yeah, I think that's a good one, Ryan. I think because he was 4th round, right?
Yes.
Like, what would you say he's played like for the Giants? Like, what kind of round would you say his game has?
Oh, he's been a second round player for the Giants over the last 2 years. Like he's been very good for the Giants. So yeah, I would say he's a second round type of player in the last 2 years.
I can dig that
for sure. Mike McGlinchey was drafted too high. He was drafted too high.
Yes. Now he should have been a 1st round pick for sure.
Not 9th overall. Yeah.
Correct. Agree. I thought Golden Tate was drafted too low. I thought Golden Tate should have been a 1st round pick. Yeah, I thought he should have been a 1st round pick at the time. He's played like a 2nd round pick. He played like a 2nd round pick in the NFL. He never played like a 1st round pick.
Oh, I got one that was drafted too high.
Who's that?
Troy Nicholas was drafted way too high.
Oh gosh, yes. Off one decent
2nd round pick. Yeah.
He got drafted too high. He got drafted way too high. Now this guy didn't get drafted too high. Or too low, but I still would have loved to have seen where Capron Lewis Moore would have got picked had he not blown his knee out in the title game.
Yeah.
Because he was a really good, like very underrated player for that team. Very underrated player for that team.
Did Romeo Aguirre even get drafted? He might not have gotten drafted, right?
He was an undrafted free agent.
Should have gotten drafted.
He should have got Ryan, not even just based on what he's done. I never understood. Yes. His last year at Notre Dame, especially when you consider the fact that he was like 20 when he came out as a senior.
Yeah.
But he was productive, though. That's the thing is like Romeo produced for them. That his last year, his senior year, he had 13.5 tackles for loss and 9 sacks and 32 solo tackles for that team. I never understood why he didn't get more draft love. He was actually a little better than I thought he was going to be. I was like, he's going to have 10 sacks some year. But I was like, how's this guy not get drafted? He's a good kid. He's a hard worker. He's very young for his. You're getting a very young football player. And, he just I never understood that one. And I'll say this. I thought his brother was a little overdrafted because I never thought Julian had the work ethic to be an NFL player. Like if Julian had his brother's work ethic, I think he'd be pretty good. You know that right now, Romeo Aguirre has been in the NFL, Ryan. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. He's been in the NFL for 7 years. You know how old he is? He's 27. Yeah. That's it. It's 27. That's
good
it.
For him, man.
He's
gonna make some good coin by the end of his career, man.
Yeah, he's already made some. He's already had 2 contracts he signed. So I always liked him. I'm trying to think of a couple others that were drafted low. We have a couple that were drafted too high, but I'm trying to think of some that were drafted a little bit too low. I thought Stephon Tuitt should have been drafted higher.
He's a 2nd rounder too, right?
He was 46th overall, so he was like in the teens of the 2nd round, like 14 of the 2nd round. That's the same draft that Troy Nicholas got picked 6 picks later.
That's wild.
Yeah. Jalen Smith got drafted too low for the type of player he was before the injury, but I understand why he was picked where he was picked. Completely understand that one. Trying to look, I thought Nick Martin was drafted too high. I thought that was a little too high for him.
It's a 2nd rounder as well, right?
He was a 2nd rounder. Yeah. He was a 2nd rounder. Let's see here. I'm trying to go through. Jeremiah Usukoromoa was too low.
Yes.
In my opinion, he was too low. He was definitely a guy who was picked too low. And I understand why he got picked lower, but he was picked too low. I thought Ryan Harris was picked too low. He was a third-round pick.
Oh,
third.
Yeah.
Really? He was a third-round pick. He was a pretty good NFL player. You take out a couple injuries, he was a pretty good NFL player. Won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
With the starter on that Broncos team that won a Super Bowl. I'm just trying to find a couple other guys that were picked too low. There's not a ton of those guys. What kind of – man, it's just going through this. You think of some of these guys that, man, I really thought this guy was going to be good. Mike Rosenthal is a fifth-round pick. Mike Rosenthal had a pretty good NFL career, if I remember correctly, with the Giants, didn't he?
I'm trying to remember. Mike
Rosenthal. Him and Luke Pettigrew were picked the same year. Mike Rosenthal was the higher ranked guy coming out, if I remember correctly. But he was, I'm trying to find here. He started 58 games in the NFL. Believe he had some injuries. Fifth round. I thought at the time, I thought he should have been picked higher. I'm trying to go through a couple more. But yeah, those are some ones, Ryan, that you look at and say, boy, that guy should have been – Bobby Taylor should have been picked higher. That's another guy. Bobby Taylor should have been a first-round pick. If Tom Carter was the number 17 pick, Bobby Taylor should have been picked higher. He was a better player than Tom Carter was in college and in the NFL. So Justin Tuck's another one. Justin Tuck was picked too low.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he should have been a first-round pick.
He definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's get to a few more here before we get out of here, Ryan. I'm going to read this one. Okay. There's a couple NFL draft ones, Ryan. So these next couple, I'm going to ask. I'll bring them up to you and have you ask them. Answer them. So this is from Eric Santini. He asked, why don't the Texans or Cardinals trade back to the backside of the top 10 to get extra picks and also scoop up Jalen Carter?
I think the Cardinals are the big trade back option in the top 5. Like, they're the team that really wants to trade back. I mean, they're sitting at number 3. I think that pick is really valuable too, especially if the Houston Texans stay there and take a position player. Let's say they take Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson, and there are 3 quarterbacks on the board with that 3rd overall selection. I would be almost shocked if the Arizona Cardinals do not trade back in that spot, because there's going to be such a high demand. I mean, you're going to be hearing calls from the Indianapolis Colts, Las Vegas Raiders, I'm sure will have some interest there. I think the Tennessee Titans will be another team that would want to potentially trade up from 11. So I think the Cardinals will absolutely be in that conversation trade back. There's no doubt about it.
And part of it too is, guys, you've got to have a trade partner willing to give up enough to move back. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing too, is there's not always the trade partners that make sense, for you, because there may be teams willing to give up a lot, but it's like, but I don't want to move back that far. I don't want to move back to 25. I got the number 3 pick. I don't want to move back to 25 or something like that, So you got to find a partner, right? You can't do this dance by yourself, right? Can't be a solo act. But do you think there's going to be a lot of trades tonight, Ryan, in the first round, or do you?
I think there's going to be 2 in the top 10. Then after that, I'm not sure. I think the Cardinals will be a trade back option. I actually think the Seattle Seahawks at 5 will be another team that might want to trade back.
I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot of movement in the late teens and 20s.
Could be.
For teams that just see a specific player, an edge rusher, tackle, or some of those positions where they fall in love with it and you see that kind of movement. But I don't know who that'll be. Just my little prediction.
Yeah.
And here's one from Archer 452. After Caleb, this is about next year's draft. After Caleb Williams and Drake May, who is the next quarterback off the board in the 24 draft?
Archer, I have no idea. Can we finish the 2023 draft first?
Just where they are now, who would you say this? Who would you say is probably the next in line for next year's quarterback classes? When you start
maybe Riley Leonard, maybe Michael Pratt. I think it's going to be a toolsy guy that's going to rise. Like, that's kind of what I think. I don't think there's like a foregone conclusion like that guy's a top 20 pick next year. I think it's going to be a guy where you're like, Michael Pratt has great tools. Riley Leonard has great tools. If they develop properly in a year, maybe they're that guy next year. But I have no idea to this question. I'm sorry, Archer, but I have no idea.
No, it's understandable. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, who would have said before this season about some of the guys that are, that are rising up or falling back? I mean, there's guys that were we see it every year. I remember the one year, I think it was Todd McShay had a mock draft that had like Connor Cook and Christian Hackenberg and Cardell Jones, all as being first round picks that next year.
Do you remember Mitch Leitner that played at Minnesota? He was in a first
Oh
round
yeah.
mock by
Are you
McShay as well.
serious? Oh my
Yes, he was.
gosh. And he
Yes,
still
he
has a
was.
job. Unbelievable.
Yeah, man. I will say this, Archer. I just don't think there's like a foregone conclusion right now. Like, I mean, it's like because it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just like thinking of like some of the younger quarterbacks that are going to be on the come up this next year. Like, I really think it's going to be like one of those guys that are a little bit off the radar right now. I really do. I just don't think there's like a foregone conclusion to be the next guy. Because I would say like some people I'm sure are thinking like, maybe it's Michael Penix, but like Michael Penix is the worst injury history like ever, man. Like he's not going to go high. He's not going to go high. He's had like 3 different ACL tears in his career. Like he's not
and I don't think he has NFL talent. He's not Hendon Hooker. He is a system quarterback, in my opinion. That's what I think he is. That I saw Ryan. This is actually really funny. So I pulled up a 24 mock draft just because I wanted to see the names, right? Just some names to refresh my memory, and a couple popped up. Quinn Ewers is one. I mean, and the tools I get, if he goes out and has a monster year, look, dude, if Quinn Ewers goes out there and has a 3,800 yard season and 30 touchdowns, which if freaking Will Levis is a top 5 pick, don't tell me Quinn Ewers can't be a top 5 pick in the NFL. I'm not saying you, I'm talking about just like in general. Like, should he, based on what he know? But Will Levis, if he's a top 10 pick, then Quinn Ewers is a number 1 overall pick, talent-wise, right? I mean, it's just so absurd. Bo Nix is another one. I knew you'd love that. Somebody had Bo Nix as a first-round pick. I knew you were going to say that. You hate on Bo Nix so much. But I know you hate Bo Nix. I get it. But here's a funny one. So
Drew Pine?
No, I have to know. I just do this out of fun. Because it's always good for a laugh. I actually was thinking about this when somebody asked us, what's the mock draft that makes you laugh? I always get a kick out of Walter Football's mock drafts.
Don't look at Walter Football.
And he has Jack Kaiser going in the first round of the Lions next year. I like Jack Kaiser. I do. And we've talked about Jack as a guy that needs to play for Notre Dame, but I'm sorry. That's the second time I have seen Jack Kaiser projected into the first round. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm missing. Like, I just don't understand.
You are not missing anything. Someone else is missing something.
I just don't get it. I did see this one from the Pro Football Network. Ryan, I have no clue who this person is.
Okay.
But isn't this one of the ones that you've said is a good site that I should look at as far as like when we're building our site? Isn't Pro Football Network the one, or is it
SEO wise? It's very good.
Yes. Okay, yes, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Some dude named Ian Cummings. No clue who that is.
Yes.
But he has 2 Notre Dame. He has both Joe Alt and Blake Fisher being first round picks next year.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Now he has no other Notre Dame players going in round 2 or 3, but he did have 2 Notre Dame guys going in the first round next year, which it'll be interesting to see the mock drafts, like the real quote unquote real mock drafts coming out. But he had Caleb Williams 1, Marvin Harrison 2, Olu Fashanu 3, Drake May 4. I'm like, so far, I'm like, all right, cool. But this is where Quinn Ewers. Okay, I get Quinn Ewers. I don't buy into, but I get it, right? It's the toolsy. Brock Bowers 6. All right, cool. Jared Verse 8. Malik Neighbors 9. JT Tuimoloau 10. And then I skipped one on purpose. Do you know who he has number 7 going overall? Number 7 to the New England Patriots. It's quarterback.
Michael Penix?
JJ McCarthy.
That's funny.
This is why you don't look at mock drafts, man. You know what I mean?
Any sites that's putting out 2024 or 2025 mock drafts right now, don't read that, man. The day after the draft for some clicks,
they're for fun, right? Like we will put out an early, like, hey, here's what people are saying about mock drafts. They're for fun, and just
exactly.
But they're not to be taken seriously. But yeah, I saw the one with JJ McCarthy number 7, and I was like, I just got to say this one to Ryan. Just got to say this one to Ryan. So anyway, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. I want to thank all of you so much for being with us today. This was a fun show. I'm going to put it down here again. The link to, actually, I kind of can't talked over it. Let me type it again. I want to give an update on everything. So when we began the show, there were 13 donations on that particular GoFundMe page for about $1,800, a little over $1,800. And now, as we end the show, there are 86 donations with over $4,700. And with the amount that's on their other page, they're over $5,000. So y'all, I mean, just amazing. I know all those donations weren't all from us, but a lot of them were. I'm looking through the list. I'm seeing a lot of our people here. You all are a wonderful group of people, and but giving money is a great thing. But also for those of you that are like me and believe in the power of prayer, that is also something that's even more important than giving money. And if you're someone who can't afford to give money, but you believe in the power of prayer, that is a wonderful thing that you can give as well. Your time and your care and your compassion and lifting this family up in prayer. Obviously, the dad's name is Jake, the mom's name is Abby, and it's baby Brady. So I want to thank you all so much for stepping up to the plate. I knew you were going to do that. You are a great group of people. We're not done for today, though, Ryan, because tonight you and I are going to go live on the CFB Nation channel at 7:30. We're going to kick off our NFL draft coverage. Ryan and I will talk about all the picks as they go, as they happen. We'll give our analysis. We'll talk about trades. We're just going to do sort of our own, CFB Nation, IB sort of mock draft, not mock draft, but let's live draft coverage, right? So I don't want to hear what's being said on TV. And if y'all don't want to hear what's being said on TV, but you want to watch the draft, watch it, put it on mute, and listen to us. And we'll have some fun with it. But you have to, you're going to find it on the CFB Nation channel. So make sure that you are subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Obviously on YouTube will be tonight, but also on a regular podcast app. So, and of course, Ryan, down here, you got to subscribe to the message board at boards@irishbreakdown.com. We would greatly appreciate that. Tons of content out there, tons of scoop and intel on the message board. And if you like our regular site and you want the free content, it's irishbreakdown.com. Check it out. So for Ryan, I'm Brian. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you all here in about 3 hours for our live draft coverage on CFB Nation. Thanks everybody for being with us today on the Irish Breakdown podcast.